Hello, good evening, and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to the paper discussion of Unacademy All India Prelims Mock Test, paper number 3. At the expense of repeating myself, for Prelims 2024, you should take as many full-length mock tests as possible. Practice as many MCQs as possible. At Unacademy, we implemented a lot of initiatives for Prelims 2024. For example, Conquer Prelims, which was conducted in 2 phases. Phase 1 on the platform on Unacademy Learning app, where we discussed lots and lots of MCQs across subjects, focusing on the static portion of the Prelims syllabus. Static course on the platform. On YouTube, the second phase of Conquer Prelims, we focused on lots and lots of MCQs, focused upon current affairs of the past 1.5 years. Then we also conducted some full-length mock tests, for example, the one on 26th of May, then on 29th of May. Then we conducted one yesterday on the 2nd June. And you would know that next day we conduct the analysis of the entire question paper. Now, we received a lot of comments from the students, lots and lots of emails as well, asking for one extra full-length mock test. And we have paid heed to your suggestion. This test you should not miss. I urge you not to miss this test, which will be conducted on the 9th of June, 9:30 a.m. GS, 2:30 p.m. CSAT, just like the real Prelims 2024. And on the 10th of June, we will conduct the analysis of this paper as well. But one more thing, what if you miss this test live? Or what if you have already missed the test that we conducted yesterday? Please go through the link that is provided in the video description. Click on that link and you can attempt yesterday's test as well. Please do that, and please do not miss the test that we shall be conducting on the 9th of June, both for GS as well as CSAT. So let's get started with the analysis of the question paper that we conducted yesterday. We will be discussing polity, international relations, economics, history questions. And if you have liked the initiative of one more test just before the test on the 16th of June, please press the like button, drop in your comments as well, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. Let's get started and look at question number 1 from Indian Polity. Consider the following statements with reference to the appointment of retired judges at sittings of high courts. Number 1, the appointment of such judges has been provided in the Constitution. This is correct. If we look at Article 224 capital A of the Constitution, it talks about the appointment of retired judges at the sittings of the High Court. Now listen to me carefully. When we say A, that means it was not originally part of the Constitution. It was added to the Constitution later. And when was it added? 15th Constitutional Amendment Act 1963, which talks about that a retired judge of a High Court. Now listen to me carefully. For example, there is a need at the Calcutta High Court. Can we appoint the retired judges who have served only at the Calcutta High Court? Or can we bring in the retired judge from any high court of this country? From any high court of this country. But this time, the Chief Justice of that High Court will have to get the previous consent, approval of the President of India. And that too, with the consent of the retired High Court judge as well. So the appointment of such judges has been provided in the Constitution. This statement is correct. Article 224 capital A talks about this. The Chief Justice of a High Court for any state can request a person to act as the judge of the High Court with prior consent of the President. This is also correct. The third statement, such a judge is entitled to allowances as determined by the Parliament of India, not by the Parliament, as determined by the President of India. So statement 3 is incorrect. The question is asking how many of the statements given above is or are correct. B, only 2 is the right answer. Let's look at another question. Consider the following statements about writs in India. The writ of habeas corpus, for example. Article 32, which Dr. B.R. Ambedkar said is the fundamental of all fundamental rights. If your fundamental rights have been violated, you can directly approach the Supreme Court under Article 32 of the Constitution, or you can approach the High Court as well under Article 226 of the Constitution. And the High Court and the Supreme Court can issue various writs to safeguard and protect your fundamental rights. And that is why we say Supreme Court is the protector of your fundamental rights. And the beauty about Article 32 is that this remedy to approach the Supreme Court in case your fundamental rights are violated, this remedy itself is a fundamental right. That is why Dr. Ambedkar said, if you ask me, this article, without this article, the entire fundamental rights chapter would have been an exercise in nullity, futility. So this is the fundamental of all fundamental rights. And in case of habeas corpus, for example, I will use a different highlighter for this. Principle of locus standi does not apply. That means who can approach the Supreme Court? Somebody who has been arbitrarily detained, unlawfully detained, or anybody on behalf of that individual. Anybody on behalf of that individual, that is what we say, principle of locus standi does not apply. That means only an aggrieved individual approaching the court? No. Anybody can approach the court and file the petition of habeas corpus. The writ of habeas corpus, the statement says, is not issued where the proceeding is for contempt of a legislature or of a court. This statement is correct. If you have been illegally detained by the state, which means this writ can be issued against the state as well as against a private individual. Normally, fundamental rights are enforceable against the state. But in case of habeas corpus, whether the violator is the state or a private entity, the writ of habeas corpus can be issued. But the statement is asking, the writ of habeas corpus is not issued where the proceeding is for the contempt of a legislature or of a court. If somebody is accused of contempt of court and the proceeding is going on under contempt of court, or the proceedings are going on when somebody is committing the contempt or is alleged to have committed the contempt of the privilege of the parliament or a legislature, the writ of habeas corpus is not issued. It is issued when you have been illegally, unlawfully detained by the state or by a private entity. The writ of mandamus can be issued when the duty is discretionary and not mandatory. This is incorrect. Mandamus basically means it is issued against a public body when this public body has failed to discharge its duty. But this duty has to be mandatory one, not the discretionary one. So a mandamus is issued by the top court or by the High Court under Article 226 if a public body has failed to perform its duty and thereby has violated the rights of the individuals. And in case of mandamus, locus standi applies, which means only the aggrieved individual can approach the court. Which of these statements given above is or are correct? A, one only is the right answer. Clear? Let's look at another question. Which among the following best describes the concept of doctrine of severability as is often seen in the news? For example, there is a law, and this law has, for example, 4 clauses. Just one clause is violative of the Constitution. Does that mean the entire law will be declared unconstitutional? No. It's only this clause which violates the Constitution. It will be severed, cut basically, will not be implemented. The rest of the law will be implemented. This is what we call doctrine of severability. For example, look at Article 13, Clause 1 of the Constitution, which says all laws enacted prior to the commencement of the Constitution, if these laws are in agreement with Part 3 of the Constitution, with the fundamental rights provided by the Part 3 of the Constitution, these laws, these pre-constitutional laws will continue after the commencement of the Constitution as well. But if these laws are inconsistent or violative of Part 3 of the Constitution, fundamental rights under Part 3 of the Constitution, then such laws, to the extent of such contravention, shall be declared null and void. That's Article 13, which speaks about the doctrine of severability. So it allows the judiciary to remove certain sections of a statute, of a law, while retaining the rest of the statute if it is found to be unconstitutional. A is the right answer. Clear? Let's look at another question. Consider the following statements. Rajya Sabha can pass a resolution in the nation's interest by majority of 2/3 of its members requesting Parliament make legislation on a state list subject. There is Schedule 7 of the Constitution, which talks about distribution of legislative subjects. Union list, state list, concurrent list. Who has the power to legislate on the matters mentioned in the union list? Parliament. Parliament has this power. Who has the power to make a law on any item mentioned in the state list? State legislature. And you would know both Parliament as well as state legislature has the power to enact a law on any item mentioned in the concurrent list. But even those matters which are under the state list, Parliament sometimes has the power to make a law on these subjects. How? For example, Article 249. What Article 249 says? If Rajya Sabha passes a resolution by 2/3 of the members present and voting, requesting the Parliament that it is in nation's interest to legislate on state list, Parliament becomes empowered to make a law on state list. Long story short, if Rajya Sabha, which is the Council of States, which represents the interests of the states in the Indian Parliament, which is the federal chamber of Indian Parliament, if it requests in national interest that you should legislate on a matter related or mentioned in the state list, Parliament becomes empowered to make a law on state list. But such a law is valid for forever, is valid for 1 year. But can this law be extended? Can the validity of this law be extended even beyond 1 year? Yes. By another year, then by another year, then by another year, but each time on the basis of the resolution passed by Rajya Sabha. So long story short, under Article 249 of the Constitution, if Rajya Sabha passes a resolution in nation's interest by 2/3 of the members present and voting, then Parliament becomes empowered to make a law mentioned in the state list. And the validity of this law is 1 year. It can be extended, but every time Rajya Sabha will have to pass this resolution to extend the validity of this law. Rajya Sabha can pass a resolution in the nation's interest by majority of 2/3 of its members requesting Parliament make legislation on a state list subject. In how many of the above cases Parliament can make laws on subjects incorporated in the state list? So this statement is correct because it deals with Article 249. Parliament can make laws on any state list subject during national emergency. Is it correct or incorrect? It's correct. Why? Because under Article 250, under Article 352, when the President is satisfied because of war or external aggression or armed rebellion, the President can proclaim national emergency. But during national emergency, listen to me carefully, this is a very important statement. Sometimes the statements asked are such that lead to confusion, but you should not be confused. Parliament assumes concurrent power of legislation. What do we mean by concurrent power of legislation? That means all the items which are mentioned in the concurrent list, who has the power to make a law? Parliament as well as state legislature. During national emergency, you can say that all items mentioned in the state list are just like items mentioned in the concurrent list. So who can make a law? Both Parliament as well as state legislature. That is why we say under Article 250, Parliament assumes concurrent power of legislation on any matter mentioned in the state list during national emergency. But then you should also remember what is the validity of this law. This law continues till the national emergency is in place. And shall lapse six months from the revocation of national emergency. Law passed under Article 249 will have the validity of 1 year. Law passed during national emergency will continue as long as national emergency is in place. But if the national emergency is revoked today, this law will continue for a further period of 6 months. After that, this law will lapse, which is unlike the case during President's rule. What happens during President's rule? Parliament assumes the power to legislate on a state list as well for that particular state. But the validity of this law passed during President's rule, this law continues forever and ever and ever unless and until the state legislature revokes that law, repeals that law. So long story short, the validity of a law passed by the Parliament during President's rule does not depend upon the continuance of President's rule. Unlike in case of national emergency, the law passed by the Parliament during national emergency under Article 250 continues till the time national emergency is in place and shall lapse within 6 months. 6 months from the date national emergency has been revoked. When any one of the state legislature requests Union Parliament through a resolution to make a law on a particular subject mentioned in the state list, is it correct? Incorrect? This is incorrect. Only 2B is the right answer. Why? Because this pertains to Article 252, which says when two or more states request Parliament, then Parliament becomes empowered to make a law on state list. But listen to me carefully. When two or more states, not when any one of the state legislatures. And if there are two or more states which request the Parliament under Article 252 to legislate on a state list, this amounts to surrender of that power. So that power which was with the state legislature, but that state legislature or these two or more state legislatures are now requesting the Parliament to make a law on that subject. It is assumed that those state legislatures which passed that resolution they seem to have surrendered this power to the Parliament. Tomorrow Parliament may or may not give that power back to the state. So only 2B is the right answer. Question 35 as it appeared in the question paper. Consider the following statements regarding zero FIR. A zero FIR can be filed in any police station irrespective of jurisdiction. For example, on December 16, 2012, when Nirbhaya was gang raped in a moving bus in Delhi, after that a committee was set up which was headed by the former Chief Justice of India, Justice J.S. Verma, known as the Justice Verma Committee. Justice Verma Committee was asked, can you please suggest what are the changes that we can make to our criminal law, particularly focused on women? And it recommended zero FIR. Zero FIR is in the sense that if this is a police station, it has a jurisdiction over a piece of area. If a crime was committed here, this police station will accept the information, will receive the information, will write that information down, known as the FIR. But what if this crime was committed in a different zone, which is beyond the jurisdiction of this police station? This police station would not accept this information, would not register the FIR. Now, to make it smooth for women to file FIR in case of assault, zero FIR concept was innovated, which has now found mention in the Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita 2024. This zero FIR means that if a crime has been committed in a jurisdiction under A, but you can file this FIR, register this FIR, get this FIR registered in any other police station, which can be B, C, anything. So irrespective of this jurisdiction, this is correct. Zero FIR means that no serial number is assigned to this information. But then if the crime was committed under this police station A, but FIR or zero FIR was registered in B, then what this police station will do, will transfer this case to A, because this is where the crime was committed, and ultimately this A will register, will give it the serial number and will start investigation. This is something that we have discussed in one of the Conquer Prelims discussions as well. The case is not non-transferable because it is transferable. If one police station which does not have the jurisdiction has registered the zero FIR, it will now have to transfer this case to the police station under whose jurisdiction this crime was committed. The provision of zero FIR came up based on the recommendations of the Justice Verma Committee. This is something which is correct, which I have discussed. So only two statements are correct. B is the right answer. Let's look at another question. Consider the following statements regarding the directive principles of state policy. Now, directive principles of state policy, if we need to revise a bit, which come under part 4 of the Constitution, which deal with, let's say, articles 36 to 51, these are part of non-justiciable provisions of the Constitution. Non-justiciable in the sense that you cannot approach the court in case these directive principles are not implemented, because these directive principles are not enforceable in a court of law. But they've got two important characteristics. And these two important characteristics are mentioned under Article 37. Article 37 talks about two important characteristics of directive principles. One, they are not enforceable in a court of law. Nevertheless, it shall be the duty of the state to implement these directive principles, because these directive principles are fundamental for the governance of the country. But then the question arose, what if the state wants to implement directive principles, but in the process it leads to conflict with fundamental rights? What will prevail, fundamental rights or directive principles? Originally, the position of the court was that directive principles are inferior, fundamental rights are superior. For example, the Champak Dorai case of 1951. We don't have to go too deep into that. I know that you know it. We are here just to discuss this question and revise a bit. But then, because of series of constitutional amendments, for example, the 25th Constitutional Amendment Act 1971, and then again 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, two directive principles, Article 39B and 39C, they have primacy over three fundamental rights, Article 14, 19 and 31. Which means if the state wants to implement two directive principles under Article 39B and 39C, and in the process it violates Article 14, 19 and 31, merely on this ground, the law should not be declared unconstitutional. What is 39B and 39C? 39B, for example, it says the material resources of a community. And on this matter, there is a case going on in the Supreme Court as well, which I'm sure you are aware of. The material resources shall be so distributed so that it leads to larger public good, or it leads to maximum happiness of the maximum number of people. Or in the words of the Constitution, we can say that the material resources should be so distributed so as to subserve the common good. That's 39B. And 39C says the operation of the economic system should not result in the concentration of wealth to a common detriment. The operation of the economic system should not result in the concentration of wealth in fewer individuals or in fewer hands. Let's look at the question. The provision of right to an adequate means of livelihood equally for men and women. This comes under Article 39, Clause A. Distribution of material resources of the community to subserve the common good. 39, Clause B. Avoidance of concentration of wealth and means of production to a common detriment in fewer hands. This is 39C. Providing equal pay for equal work for both men and women. This is 39 Clause D. How many of above actions cannot be declared void on the grounds of contravention, violation of Article 14 and 19 of the Constitution? Only two, because 39B and 39C. In fact, during national emergency, which was imposed in June 1975, then 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act was enacted. This was done by 25th Constitutional Amendment Act. What 42nd Amendment Act tried to do, it tried to give primacy to all DPSPs over three fundamental rights. So this 25th Constitutional Amendment Act, this tried to give, or this gave primacy to two directive principles over three fundamental rights. But in 1976, the Parliament decided or attempted to give primacy to all directive principles over three fundamental rights. But ultimately, it was challenged before the court in a famous case known as the Minerva Mills, and Supreme Court said this is unconstitutional. Why? Because harmonious relationship between directive principles and fundamental rights, it's also part of the basic structure of the Constitution. Clear? I'm just trying to give you additional information just so that you can revise your concepts as well. And the last minute revision is always very fruitful. As per the Constitution of India, the power to constitute a finance commission to review the financial position of the panchayats lies with the governor of a state, because we are talking about state finance commission for panchayats. Otherwise, under Article 280, the president has to constitute the finance commission for the union at the central level. But under Article 243, which deals with provisions related to panchayat, for reviewing the situation or the financial position of the panchayats, for that a state finance commission is constituted by the governor of that state in after every 5 years. Something we can mention here as well, every 5 years. Clear? Let's look at another question. Consider the following statements regarding the Juvenile Justice Board constituted under the provisions of Juvenile Justice, Care and Protection of Children Act 2015. In India, the age of criminal culpability is 7 years. In a sense, if a child less than the age of 7 commits murder, commits crime, you will not be held accountable. But if there is a child in the age group of 7 to 12, you will be held accountable if you are of mature mind. But then the child above the age of 12 is always subjected to the law if this child has committed the crime. This is something that you are aware of. This is same in IPC, this is the same in the new code as well. But the point is, before this amendment in 2015, a child who was less than the age of 18, he was criminally responsible for committing crimes, but this child could not be tried like an adult. That means could not be tried by the regular court, will not be sentenced to the regular jail, and the maximum punishment that could have been awarded to this person or to this child, what we can call juvenile, less than the age of 18, the maximum punishment was 3 years, that too in a reform home. But then in 2015, after the Nirbhaya gang rape, this is when the law was modified, amended. Now, if there is an individual in the age group of 16 to 18, but this person has committed a heinous crime, this child, this juvenile can be tried as an adult, but for that, the decision should be taken by the Juvenile Justice Board. Clear? It empowers the central government to constitute Juvenile Justice Board in every district of India, not the central government, state government, to constitute Juvenile Justice Board, one or more Juvenile Justice Board in every district. So this statement is incorrect. It empowers the state government, not the central government. A practicing professional with a degree in child psychology can be a member of the JJB. Yes. For example, the recent big crime which was committed in Pune by a speeding Porsche driver who was allegedly drunk, less than the age of 18. Now, whether this juvenile will be tried as an adult or not, for that the analysis of this child has to be done by the Juvenile Justice Board, by the members of the Juvenile Justice Board, so that they can see whether this child was aware of what he is doing, what are the ramifications, what are the consequences of his or her actions. Whether you are aware that if you will be drunk and then driving and somebody will be hit, what will be the consequences of that? If they decide that yes, he was of sound mind, in a sense that he was aware of what he is doing, what will be the repercussions and consequences of that act, then he can be tried as an adult. A person can be appointed as a member of the board for a maximum period of 2 terms. This is correct. So the term is 3 years. But you can be reappointed as well. But reappointment is only for 2 terms. And please ensure these 2 terms should not be continuous. That means continuous for 6 years? No. You can be appointed as a member of the Juvenile Justice Board for 3 years, then a break, then another 3 years you can be appointed again for 2 terms, but these terms should not be continuous. So 2 statements are correct. B is the right answer. Consider the following statements regarding anti-defection law in India. The Speaker acts as a quasi-judicial body while exercising the power under this law, because whoever violates the provisions of anti-defection law under the 10th schedule of the Constitution, which was inserted into the Constitution by the 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1985, who will be the deciding authority whether you should be disqualified on the grounds of defection or not? That person is the Speaker. So the Speaker does act as a quasi-judicial body to decide whether you are guilty or not of defection. So this statement is correct. The law has not provided any time limit on the presiding officer to decide on the plea for disqualification of members. This is also correct because this is subject to a lot of criticism as well. There is no time limit within which the Speaker will have to decide whether you should be disqualified or not for violating the provisions of the 10th schedule. The anti-defection law is applicable to elected and nominated members, but not for independent members. Only two statements are correct. Because what are the provisions of anti-defection law? If I am a member of a house can be Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, Legislative Assembly, Legislative Council, and I belong to a political party. I am an elected member to this house belonging to a political party. If I voluntarily resign from my party, I will be disqualified. If I violate the whip issued by the political party, I will be disqualified. If an independent member of a house joins another political party after the election, disqualified. If a nominated member joins a political party 6 months after the nomination, because if I am nominated to Rajya Sabha, I can join a political party within 6 months of my nomination. But if I join a political party after 6 months, I will be disqualified. I can be disqualified. So it applies to elected as well, nominated as well, independent members as well. So that is why only two statements are correct. B is the right answer. Clear? Let's look at another question. Consider the following statements with reference to the terms related to imprisonment. The period of furlough granted to a prisoner is treated as remission of his or her sentence. Correct? The superintendent of a jail is authorized to grant parole in case of emergencies. Correct? Which of these statements are correct? B. C. Both 1 and 2 is the right answer. Furlough is considered to be the right of a prisoner. Parole not treated as a right. And both are governed by the Prisons Act of 1894. But the point is, since prison is a state subject under the distribution of powers under Schedule 7 of the Constitution, different states have different prison rules. Although there is a model law, but they have different rules that you're aware of. But the point is, furlough, for example, it's a matter of right of an individual and normally is given to those prisoners who are serving long-term imprisonment in the jail. But they can be released, and that's their right. Released for certain days so that they can mix with the society, so that they cannot stay away from the society for a long time. It's a matter of right for them. But parole is given for some emergencies. For example, there is a wedding in the family. For example, there is a death in the family. And in some case, because of some emergencies, for example, Sanjay Dutt was granted parole because he was not feeling well because of some medical emergency. Otherwise, if there is a family function, if there is a wedding of a close blood relative, then parole is granted. But parole is not a matter of right. You cannot claim it as your right. But furlough is a right, because furlough is, if you are serving long imprisonment in the jail, after some time you will be released from the jail once your term is over. But then you will be too scared because the world would have changed to ensure that you are not completely out of sync with the reality. Sometimes you are released on furlough, and this is considered remission of your sentence. Because those days where you are out on furlough, that doesn't mean that if you are serving 10 years in jail, you are released on furlough for 10 days. That means now you will have to serve 10 years and 10 days in jail. Those 10 days will be remitted from your sentence. That is question number 40. Now question 73, as it appeared in the question paper, as per the Constitution of India, every panchayat should have a Gram Sabha. A Gram Sabha is a body consisting of all the registered voters in the area of a panchayat. Gram Sabha is the body which has to be constituted in every village according to the 73rd Amendment Act 1992, and it consists of all those who are the registered voters in that village, all those who are above the age of 14, above the age of 18. Then there is something called Gram Panchayat, which is the first tier. Then Nagar Panchayat, which is the second tier. Then there is Zilla Parishad. Because 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act creates a 3-tier Panchayati Raj system. But this second tier is not necessary to be constituted in a state if the population of that state is less than 20,000. So please revise this chapter Panchayats, because definitely one question will be asked from Panchayats, and sometimes the factual questions only are asked from Panchayats. For example, what is the age at which you are eligible to contest election to Panchayat? It's 21. For Lok Sabha it is 25. For Rajya Sabha it is 30. But for Panchayat it is 21. Clear? Similarly, the term of the Panchayat is 5 years. But in case of premature dissolution of Panchayat, fresh election has to be conducted within 6 months. So on and so forth. All these things you should mention. Reservation of seats. In all the 3 tiers, there should be reservation for SCs and STs in proportion to their population. It's mandatory. There has to be reservation for women. Not less than 1/3 of the seats shall be reserved for women. All these things, please revise. Very important topic for your examination. Question 92. Consider the following statements with reference to the office of governor. Money bills can be introduced in the state legislature only with the prior recommendation of the governor. That's true, just like we have money bill at the center under Article 110 cannot be introduced in Lok Sabha without the prior approval of the President of India. So here you can say State Legislative Assembly. That would be much better. Unlike the President of India, the governor cannot pardon a death sentence. Governor cannot pardon a death sentence. Governor can commute a death sentence. Governor takes oath to preserve, protect and defend the constitution and the law. This is correct. Governors cannot act on their discretion and dismiss the Council of Ministers on an inability to prove confidence in the State Legislative Assembly. The governor can. If you have failed to prove majority on the floor of the State Legislative Assembly, which means the governor in his discretion can dismiss the Chief Minister and the Council of Ministers. So only 3 statements are correct. C is the right answer. Let's look at another question. Consider the following statements with reference to the Committee on Subordinate Legislation, which is present in Lok Sabha as well. It is present in Rajya Sabha as well. It checks if the power to make regulations or rules conferred by the Constitution to the executive are being properly exercised. For example, Citizenship Amendment Act was passed by the Parliament in 2019. Clear? It was passed in 2019, but to implement this law, rules are to be made. And these rules are made by the executive. And this is what we call delegated legislation. And this is something that you are aware of. Delegated legislation, that means Parliament is making a skeleton law and delegating the power to make rules to the executive. But whether the executive is making rules in agreement, in conformity with the Constitution, in conformity with the law that was passed by the Parliament, for that there is a committee in Lok Sabha as well as in Rajya Sabha called Committee on Subordinate Legislation, which reviews these rules. Clear? So the statement 1 is correct. The committee consists of 15 members in both the houses of the Parliament. It consists of 15 members in Lok Sabha. Both the statements are correct. 1 and 2 is the right answer. Now the last question, consider the following statements with reference to the due process of law. the Indian Constitution explicitly mentions the phrase due process of law under Article 21 of the Constitution, which is not correct. Because Constitution says under Article 21, the state shall not deprive an individual of his right to life and personal liberty except according to the procedure established by law. And it is this procedure established by law which was borrowed from the Japanese Constitution. But Supreme Court in Maneka Gandhi 1978 case said we basically follow due process of law. And we have discussed that previously as well multiple times. What is the difference between procedure established by law and due process of law? Basically, in due process of law, it protects you against the arbitrary action of the executive as well as the legislature. If it is only procedure established by law, the courts will protect you against the arbitrary actions of the executive. If the executive has arrested you without a law, if the executive has arrested you under an invalid law, if the executive has not followed the rules and regulations properly. For example, in case of the founder editor of NewsClick, the Supreme Court declared that this arrest is illegal. Why? Because the procedures were not followed. But what if the law is bad? What if the procedures are unreasonable, unjust, unfair? Procedure established by law cannot protect you. But due process of law can protect you. Because under due process of law, the court will check whether the law is good, whether the procedures are just, reasonable and fair. So it gives judiciary the right to assess the fundamental fairness of every legislation. This is correct. So how many given statements is or are correct? B only, 2 is the right answer. That is it from our discussion of these questions from Indian polity which were asked in yesterday's Unacademy All India Prelims mock test. I urge you to take the last full-length mock test scheduled for the 9th of June. Please don't miss that test. That's a very important test. As per the standards of the UPSC Prelims question paper, please attempt that test. And if you have forgotten, do press the like button. I will pause here. I'll ask and request Chethan sir to come and discuss the questions from the world of international relations. Over to Chethan sir. I will see you again on the 10th of June with another analysis of this All India Prelims mock test question paper. Thank you for staying with me.
Hello everyone, very good evening and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to the paper analysis and discussion of All India Mock Test number 3. We have already conducted 2 mock tests and we have analyzed those papers as well. And today we are going to discuss mock test number 3. Sarmad sir has already covered polity and now I shall be taking up the IR questions that had appeared in yesterday's mock test. Now these mock tests, they are part of our initiatives to help you prepare for the upcoming prelims exam. Now if you have missed the 3 previous tests, don't worry. We are bringing the 4th mock test on the 9th of June. So without fail, attend the mock test on June 9th and we shall discuss that paper as well on the 10th of June. And also if you want to attempt mock test 1, 2 and 3, which has already been completed, you can still do that by clicking on the link provided in the video description below. So do ensure you attempt these full-length mock tests because this is the best possible way to prepare for the upcoming prelims exam. And we really hope these initiatives help you ace the upcoming prelims as well. So if you guys are liking our initiatives, do press the like button, share your comments and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Now let's look at the first question from IR, which was question number 89. This was a match the following type of question. With respect to the disaster relief operations conducted by the Government of India, consider the following pairs. I am sure you would have heard about India's HADR missions, through which we assist friendly countries in disaster management. HADR stands for Humanitarian Assistance and Disaster Relief. So essentially we have incorporated disaster management assistance into our foreign policy. Since India has a well-established disaster management architecture, we have the required resources including capable armed forces like the Navy, Air Force and the Army, along with the NDRF. We can provide specialized assistance to countries which are hit by various disasters, be it earthquakes or cyclones or any such calamity. Small countries and poor countries, they won't be able to cope with the impact of these events. So as a diplomatic gesture, India provides disaster management assistance by launching these HADR operations. So over the last 18 months, there have been many such HADR missions conducted by India. So the question is focused on such events. So on the left, we have a set of disaster relief operations. On the right, you need to check whether it has been correctly matched with the country or the area of operation. So first we have Operation Dost matched with Turkey, Operation Karuna matched with Comoros and Mission Sagar matched with Yemen. Now let us check which of the pairs are correctly matched. I'll give you the correct answer and I'll explain about these HADR missions conducted by India. The first pair is correctly matched. Operation Dost was conducted by India in Turkey and as well as in Syria. Many of you would remember last year Turkey and Syria were hit by a devastating earthquake. And India reached out to both the countries and through Operation Dost, we sent medical teams along with medical assistance and even food aid was delivered by India to these countries to cope with the impact of the earthquake. So first pair is absolutely correct. But the second pair, Operation Karuna, it is incorrectly matched. Operation Karuna was focused on providing assistance to Myanmar, which was hit by Cyclone Mocha. Last year, Cyclone Mocha took shape in the Bay of Bengal and it curved towards Bangladesh and Myanmar and caused extensive devastation in Myanmar, especially in the Rakhine state, which has already been affected by ethnic violence and clashes. So India reached out to the country and provided disaster management assistance under Operation Karuna. So second pair is incorrect. It is not Comoros, it is Myanmar. Coming to the third pair. The third pair is also incorrect because Mission Sagar was launched in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic to provide basic assistance to several Indian Ocean countries, the small island nations in the Indian Ocean. They were assisted by India following the breakout of the COVID-19 pandemic. So third pair is incorrect. It's not Yemen. Instead, it would be Indian Ocean countries like Maldives, Mauritius, Madagascar, Comoros, Seychelles. And later, the second phase of Mission Sagar was also launched, through which we provided medical assistance to even Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam, Thailand, and others. So the focus of Mission Sagar was to provide basic medical support to these small island countries so that they could cope with the impact of the pandemic. We delivered medical supplies, essential drugs, testing kits, PPE kits, and even sanitizers and oxygen cylinders were dispatched by India through the Indian Navy, and the relief material was delivered to all these countries. So coming back to the question, the first pair is correct, second and third pairs are incorrectly matched. So what's the right answer? Option A, only one pair is correctly matched. Now, apart from these HADR missions, India also has carried out many evacuation missions to rescue Indian nationals and the Indian diaspora which has been stuck abroad in very difficult circumstances. For example, during wars, conflicts, or even during disasters, Indians would be trapped abroad, and it becomes the responsibility of the Indian government to safely bring them back. So for this purpose, India has conducted many evacuation missions as well over the years, and even this could be asked as a prelims question. So please make a note of the important evacuation missions. I'll give you the entire list. We have Operation Devi Shakti that was conducted in Afghanistan in 2021 when Taliban took over the country. Following the collapse of the Afghan government and after Taliban established its regime, the Indian nationals and the Indian community was under threat, and India evacuated all the nationals, our officials, and as well as some of the Afghan nationals who were good friends of India who would be targeted by the Taliban. They were all safely rescued by India and brought back under Operation Devi Shakti. Then when Russia invaded Ukraine 2 years ago, 20,000 medical students were stuck in Ukraine. So India launched Operation Ganga to rescue the Indian nationals, primarily the medical students who were stuck, and we safely brought them back. Then more recently, we carried out Operation Kaveri in Sudan, where a civil war had caused a major security situation. Thousands of Indians were trapped, including members of Hakki-Pikki tribe from Karnataka, and through Operation Kaveri, India rescued the Indian nationals from the country. Then after the Gaza war broke out from Israel and from Gaza, we rescued the Indian nationals under Operation Ajay. And in the Caribbean nation of Haiti, following the increase in gang violence and criminal activities, there was a serious threat for Indian nationals, and we evacuated some of the Indians from Haiti under Operation Indravati. So these are some recent evacuation missions that you need to remember. Apart from that, there are few older evacuation missions as well, like Operation Rahat from Yemen in 2014, when the Houthis they toppled the Yemeni government and thousands of Indians were trapped in the civil war hit country. So through Operation Rahat, we safely brought back the Indians from Yemen. Then we provided disaster management assistance to Nepal in 2015 when Nepal was devastated by an earthquake. So that was Operation Maitri, where we provided disaster management assistance to Nepal. And we also have Operation Safe Home Coming in 2011 in Libya, when Arab Spring movement had led to the collapse of Gaddafi's government, and thousands of Indians, especially Indian nurses, were trapped in Libya. So through Operation Safe Home Coming, the then Manmohan Singh government safely brought back thousands of Indians. Then in Lebanon, when the Israel-Lebanon war broke out in 2005-2006, thousands of Indians were rescued from Lebanon under Operation Sukoon. And in 1990s, when Iraq had invaded Kuwait, Saddam Hussein, the dictator of Iraq, had invaded Kuwait, and thousands of Indians were stuck in the conflict. So through the Gulf airlift, thousands of Indians were rescued from Iraq and Kuwait, and these are the list of evacuation missions and as well as the disaster management assistance operations that India has deployed to not just rescue the Indians but also to help out the small countries during times of disasters. So now let's look at the next question, question number 90, which is also a match the following type of question. So here we have a list of strategic ports and naval bases on the left which have been in the news, and they are matched with the countries where they might be located. So you need to check which of them are correctly matched. Essentially you need to do a match the following kind of a sequence and select the correct option. So this kind of question can become a little more challenging because you need to know where all the 4 strategic ports or naval bases are located, or else it might become a little challenging to get the right answer. So let's look at this question. Let's crack the question first, and then I'll explain the significance of each location, and we'll also understand some related points with regard to these strategic ports and naval bases. So first we have the port of Dorale. This is located in the African country of Djibouti. So 1 matches with 3. So by looking at the options, you can actually eliminate here. You can eliminate A and B. Is that clear? The port of Dorale, which is in Djibouti, has been in the news. I'll explain why. I'll show you the map as well. So if you know this, you can eliminate A and B. Now it's between C and D, which has to be the correct answer. The Kyokfu port, it's located in Myanmar. Even this port has been frequently in the news. So 2 has to be matched with 4. So if you are able to get the first 2 pairs correct, you will be able to still get the right answer through the elimination method. But sometimes this may not happen. The options might be very confusing. Then you should know the other ports and their locations as well. The port of Duqm is in Oman. So 3 match with 1. And the Ream naval base would be in Cambodia. The Ream naval base has been recently in the news and it's located in Cambodia. So the correct answer here would be option D. Now let's look at the maps, the location of each and every port and naval base, and let me explain the significance as well. So here you are looking at the map of Horn of Africa. You can see the Gulf of Aden. You can see the Horn of Africa over here. You can also see the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Bab el-Mandeb is a strategic choke point that connects the narrow Red Sea with the Gulf of Aden. It's a very important shipping lane as well. So right next to Bab el-Mandeb, there is a small African country located here, which is Djibouti. And Djibouti plays a critical role as it has access to Bab el-Mandeb, and as a result, many foreign navies, many major global powers, they have established naval bases and military facilities in Djibouti so that they can protect the shipping, the commercial traffic that passes through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. So in the map you can see the port of Dorale. This was recently in the news because China has established a naval presence near the port of Dorale in Djibouti. And it's not just China. Even before China, other major powers like United States and even European navies and Japan, they all have established naval bases in the country of Djibouti in and around the port of Dorale. So through this naval presence, they safeguard these shipping lanes and protect commercial shipping from the threats posed by piracy near Horn of Africa and also other threats posed by non-state actors such as the Houthis of Yemen. There are many non-state actors who operate here, who are involved in acts of terrorism as well. So to protect the shipping lane and ensure that Bab el-Mandeb is kept open, there are multiple foreign navies deployed here. They have a naval base present in Djibouti, and hence the port of Dorale becomes very important. Next, let's look at the Kyokfu port in Myanmar. The Kyokfu port is located over here in southern Myanmar in the Rakhine state. Now this port is in the news as it has been built by China and operated by China. It is a critical part of the CMEC corridor, the China-Myanmar Economic Corridor, which is a key component of the Belt and Road Initiative. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, China has been expanding its influence by executing connectivity projects and strategic infrastructure projects around the world to bring China closer to Asian markets, African markets and European markets. So China's ambitious plan under the BRI is to gain direct access to the Indian Ocean without depending on the Malacca Strait. The Malacca Strait in Singapore, between Singapore and Indonesia, is a choke point for China. It's a strategic weakness for China because a large part of China's exports and imports, especially its import of oil from West Asia, passes through Malacca Strait between Singapore and Indonesia. So China has always been worried that in case of tensions or hostilities, either India or United States, both of which have a major naval military presence in the Andaman Sea and Indian Ocean, they can potentially blockade the Malacca Strait, thereby crippling China's exports and imports. So that is why China has been searching for alternate routes. It is trying to find alternate routes to the Indian Ocean without depending on Malacca Strait. It's trying to bypass the Malacca Strait. And China is pursuing a couple of projects. One is the CPEC project, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, through which China's Xinjiang province is being linked with Pakistan, where strategic ports like Gwadar and Karachi, right, they give direct access for China into the Arabian Sea, and from there it can access the Persian Gulf. Apart from CPEC, China is also placing a lot of bets on the CMEC corridor with Myanmar, China-Myanmar Economic Corridor. So this project connects the Yunnan province of China with strategic ports like Kyoukphu and major cities and commercial centers in Myanmar like Yangon, Mandalay and others. So CMEC corridor not only includes port projects like Kyoukphu, it also includes road and railway projects, special economic zones, industrial corridors, thermal power plants. In fact, China is also building the Mitsone hydroelectric project that you can see over here across the Irrawaddy river. This is a very ambitious project pushed by China, but until recently it had faced a lot of protests by the locals and some of the natives in the Kachin region, the Kachin ethnic group, they had opposed this project as well. But recently it was reported that Myanmar's military regime has revived the project and China is behind its revival. China wants to execute the Mitsone Dam project, which will generate hydroelectric power. It has also set up oil pipelines from the Kyoukphu port. So China is securing its energy routes and it can directly access Bay of Bengal and thus the Indian Ocean as well through the Kyoukphu port it has built in Myanmar. Now, just a few kilometers from Kyoukphu to the north of it, you have the Sitwe port which is built by India. India has built the strategic Sitwe port in Rakhine state, which is very close to the Kyoukphu port built by China. The Sitwe port built by India is part of the Kaladan project that will link India's ports like Kolkata Haldia port with the Sitwe port, and through this route we can gain alternate access to northeast India into Mizoram. So these are some important pointers that you should be aware of in order to answer any map based question in your prelims. So now let's look at the Duqm port, which was also asked in the question. The port of Duqm is located in Oman, in the West Asian country of Oman. Oman has another important port which is the Salalah port that you can see over here. Now why are these ports important? They are very important because China has been involved in the upgradation and operation of the Salalah port in Oman. This gives China a foothold in the Arabian Sea. Alright, but India is not far behind because India has very good relations with Oman. Even historically, right, since centuries, India and Oman are connected culturally and economically. And of late, strategic relations have developed between the two countries. And Oman has given port access to the Duqm port to the Indian Navy. Recently, Indian Navy has gained port access to the Duqm port, and we can use the Duqm port for logistical support for refueling and resupplies, and this enhances the operational reach of the Indian Navy. And I'm sure all of you know how important West Asia is for India, and also the important shipping lanes and choke points that are present here. For example, the Hormuz Strait over here that connects the Persian Gulf with Gulf of Oman. This is a vital shipping lane because majority of our oil and gas supplies pass through the Hormuz Strait. But there are multiple security threats present here due to the tensions between Iran and US, Iran and Israel. Plus, right below Duqm you have Bab al-Mandeb, which we discussed earlier. So for India, it's a absolute priority to stabilize these shipping lanes and these waters to deal with pirate attacks or any non-state threats posed by the Houthis or any other terrorist group. So Indian Navy has a constant deployment over here, and we have gained access to the Duqm port in Oman. So that is why these facilities are strategically very important. Now coming to the fourth strategic port and naval base that was given in the question, the Ream Naval Base located in Cambodia. So China has very good relations with Cambodia. China has a lot of influence in Cambodia, and recently China has invested in the upgradation of the Ream port and the naval base facility present over here in the Gulf of Thailand. The Gulf of Thailand is also strategically very important. It's part of the South China Sea, where China has multiple maritime disputes with other Southeast Asian countries. And also, if you look at the location of Ream Naval Base, it essentially overlooks the Malacca Strait. So China has not only constructed the Ream Naval Base and modernized it, the PLA Navy has gained access to Ream Naval Base in Cambodia, and it has been projecting its naval influence across the region from Malacca to South China Sea. So that is the reason why these ports and naval bases were in the news, and you can expect such map based questions. Now let's look at question number 91. Consider the following statements regarding ASEAN Future Forum. Statement 1 says the first ASEAN Future Forum was held in 2012 at Jakarta. This statement is incorrect. Why? The first ASEAN Future Forum was held just 2 months ago in April 2024, not in 2012. And it was held in Hanoi, Vietnam, not in Jakarta, which is in Indonesia. So that is why statement 1 becomes incorrect. Second statement says it is aimed at giving ASEAN membership to its non-ASEAN partner countries. This also is an incorrect statement. That is not the objective of ASEAN Future Forum. ASEAN Future Forum has been launched to promote the future relations between the 10 ASEAN members and its 8 dialogue partners. See, if you look at the ASEAN group, it's a regional grouping of Southeast Asian countries. So from Myanmar to Indonesia to Philippines to Singapore, all the 10 Southeast Asian countries are members of ASEAN group. The ASEAN works with 8 major powers of the region, and they have been given the dialogue partner status. Which are these dialogue partners of ASEAN? It includes India, New Zealand and Australia, South Korea, China and Japan, and as well as United States and Russia. These 8 major powers of the Indo-Pacific, they enjoy the dialogue partner status with ASEAN, and it has brought these countries together under ASEAN Future Forum to look at the future of relations between the ASEAN group and its 8 dialogue partners. The purpose here is to look at a sustainable way of building the relationship between ASEAN countries and these 8 dialogue partners. So there is no proposal to give ASEAN membership. That doesn't make any sense. So second statement is wrong. Third statement says the idea was proposed by India. This statement is also incorrect. This idea was not proposed by India. It was actually proposed by Vietnam during last year's ASEAN summit that was held in Jakarta at the 43rd ASEAN summit in 2023, which was hosted at Jakarta, Indonesia. That is where Vietnam proposed the idea of a future forum for ASEAN. So all three statements are incorrect. What's the correct answer? Option D, none of the above. Now let's look at question number 97. Consider the following statements regarding BIMSTEC Charter. The BIMSTEC is a very important sub-regional group. So let's look at the statements and check whether they are correct or incorrect. The BIMSTEC Charter was signed and adopted during the 5th BIMSTEC Summit held in virtual format in Colombo, Sri Lanka in 2022. This statement is absolutely correct. Couple of years ago, Sri Lanka hosted the 5th BIMSTEC Summit. It brought together the 7 members of BIMSTEC, which includes India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, then Nepal and Bhutan from South Asia. These are all South Asian countries, and it also includes a couple of Southeast Asian countries, that is Myanmar and Thailand. So these 7 countries, which are centered around the Bay of Bengal, they work with each other, they collaborate with each other under 7 identified sectors of cooperation. So at the Colombo Summit in 2022, they finally adopted the BIMSTEC Charter, which is the constitution of the BIMSTEC. And second statement says it reaffirms the commitment of BIMSTEC members to the principles and purposes of the grouping as enshrined in the 1997 Bangkok Declaration. This statement is also absolutely correct. If you look at the origin of BIMSTEC, it was founded in 1997 through the signing of the Bangkok Declaration. So through BIMSTEC Charter adopted in 2022, the member countries have committed to uphold the principles and objectives that were adopted during the Bangkok Declaration of 1997. And last statement says BIMSTEC Charter entered into force in 2024. This statement is also correct. After signing the BIMSTEC Charter in 2022, it has finally come into effect starting from this year. So all three given statements are correct. Option C becomes the right answer. I would like to mention a couple of important points over here. During the Colombo Summit, when BIMSTEC Charter was adopted, these countries also adopted a master plan for connectivity to establish greater connectivity between the member countries and to interlink South Asia with Southeast Asia. They have taken up several projects, maritime projects, road and railway projects, etc. And under the master plan for connectivity, the Asian Development Bank will be funding these BIMSTEC initiatives to bring the two regions together. And also please note that 7 member countries, they head each of the sector. One member country provides leadership to one particular sector, and India heads the security sector. India has the leadership of the security sector at BIMSTEC. That includes counter-terrorism, countering organized crime, disaster management, energy security. All these aspects of security are covered under this sector, and India heads the security sector. Now let's look at question number 98. Which of the following statements best describes the role of the FATF, Financial Action Task Force, in regulating the WASPs or Virtual Asset Service Providers? First, let me give you a brief background about FATF. I'll explain what are WASPs as well, and then I think the answer will become evident for you. Financial Action Task Force was established in 1989 by the G7 countries. The initial purpose of FATF was to act as an intergovernmental body to counter money laundering, to implement anti-money laundering measures or AML measures, so that a set of international standards and regulatory guidelines could be established to counter money laundering. Then following the 9/11 attacks of 2001, which established the connection between money laundering and terrorist financing, a second objective was added to the FATF, which is to counter terrorist financing. So these are the two objectives of FATF. It's headquartered at Paris. It functions out of the OECD headquarters and it has two primary objectives today. One is to implement anti-money laundering measures, and second is to implement counter-terrorist financing measures. So it sets out these international standards, guidelines and regulations which have to be followed by not just the members but even by the non-member countries. There are FATF style regional bodies around the world which enforce these international standards and regulations against money laundering and counter-terrorist financing. And FATF can enforce these regulations. It has the power to enforce by conducting a periodic review. And if a particular country fails the review, FATF can penalize those countries by placing them on the grey list. Giving a grey list or putting a country on the grey list is like issuing a warning, a notice to the country. Once a country is grey listed, it is given an action plan and a set of targets which has to be implemented within a given deadline. So if the country shows improvement, if it shows genuine willingness to counter money laundering and terrorist financing, then it might be removed from the grey list. But if a country is deliberately not cooperating with FATF, deliberately violating the FATF standards, then such a grey listed country can even be blacklisted by the FATF. For example, our dear neighbor Pakistan has a lot of experience here, as it is involved in terrorist financing and it enables money laundering as well for this purpose. It has been grey listed by FATF multiple times. Recently it was taken off the grey list. Now can you find out which are the blacklisted countries as of now? Currently, which are the blacklisted countries by FATF? Please find this out and mention this in the comment section. Now coming to VASPs, Virtual Asset Service Providers. Virtual assets refer to digital currencies or your cryptocurrencies. So there are many startups, fintech startups around the world which provide various kind of virtual asset services. There are many trading platforms where you can trade in bitcoins, Ethereum and other cryptocurrencies. There are digital wallets where you can store cryptocurrencies and digital currencies. So all these fintech companies which are providing crypto services to enable those crypto transactions, to store them in a digital wallet. So all these companies fall under the definition of virtual asset service providers. And I hope you know that cryptocurrencies and digital currencies are prone to misuse. Because of the anonymity they provide, they can be easily misused for money laundering and terrorist financing. So regulating cryptocurrencies has become a concern around the world. So recently FATF brought out few regulations that applies for virtual asset service providers as well. The FATF members and the non-members are obligated to implement all these standards and provisions through a national law. For example, India has incorporated the money laundering provisions under PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering Act. We have incorporated the terrorist financing measures under UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So that is how India has obliged with FATF standards. So recently there were regulatory standards introduced by FATF to regulate VASPs, and this has to be implemented by the countries around the world. So based on this, you can easily tell me what's the right answer. It would be option B. Please make a correction here. It's a small typo with the options. The correct answer is B. FATF sets international standards and guidelines to prevent money laundering and terrorist financing, including the regulation of virtual asset service providers. Now coming to the last IR question, question number 100. Consider the following statements regarding the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. Now the topic is in the news because a new space race has emerged between the major spacefaring nations as far as lunar exploration is concerned. India, China, Japan, US and the European powers and of course Russia, they are all rushing towards the moon, sending multiple missions including India's Chandrayaan, the Chang'e mission of China and many others. NASA has reactivated its Artemis program to bring back its lunar exploration missions and even to station astronauts and in the future to even establish potential bases on the moon. So given these developments, it's very important to know the provisions of Outer Space Treaty of 1967. Statement 1 says, the treaty prohibits the placement of nuclear weapons and other WMDs in any orbit around the Earth. This statement is absolutely correct. The Outer Space Treaty was brought out following a resolution adopted by the UN General Assembly to ensure that outer space is used only for peaceful purposes. Because in 1960s, a space race had begun between the Soviet Union and the United States as part of the Cold War rivalry. To ensure that these powers don't misuse space and militarize space, the Outer Space Treaty was adopted, and it mandates the countries to ensure that outer space is not militarized. So countries are obligated to not station nuclear weapons or any WMDs in the orbit around the earth or even on any celestial body like the moon or other celestial objects. It prohibits actually the establishment of military bases, installations and fortifications on celestial bodies. So second statement is wrong. Second statement says it allows the establishment of military bases, but this is incorrect. It is against the militarization of space. It does not allow even establishment of any kind of military bases. The third statement is absolutely correct. It says the treaty asserts that outer space, including the moon and other celestial objects, they are not subject to national appropriation by any means. See, under the Outer Space Treaty, space has been declared as part of the global commons, meaning it belongs to humanity. It does not belong to any country, be it outer space, be it any celestial object, be it the moon. No country can claim sovereignty. This is clearly specified under the treaty. It's part of the global commons and it prohibits countries from claiming national jurisdiction. Is that clear? So 1 and 3 are correct. So the right answer would be option B. Only 2 statements are correct. And also note, under Outer Space Treaty, astronauts, they are seen as envoys of mankind. They are not just representatives of their country, their respective country, but they are seen as envoys of mankind, as space represents a global common. And countries are also under the obligation to be held liable for any damages, for any risk that arises out of space activities and space exploration. For example, let's say a spacecraft object or a component of a rocket falls back on Earth. The respective country which launched the mission would be responsible for paying the damages or for cleaning up the debris. Countries are also obligated to not pollute or contaminate outer space and celestial bodies. So all such obligations are placed on the countries through the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. So this completes my discussion of all the IR questions from mock test number 3. Don't go anywhere. Shyam sir will be coming in just a minute and will be taking up questions from economy and government schemes. So I hope the initiative has been useful and I hope you've understood all the topics. As I was mentioning earlier, do take up the last full length mock test on 9th of June. You can see that on the screen. You can even attempt the previous tests, test 1, 2 and 3. You just have to click on the link provided in the video description below. So that is it. I'll just hand over the session to Shyam sir. Just hang in for a minute. We'll be back live very soon. Thanks for watching.
Good evening everyone. Let's start discussing the questions which have appeared in the Unacademy's All India Prelims mock test from the area of economy as well as government schemes. Question number 21. Consider the following statements regarding standing deposit facility. How many of the above given statements are correct? Now, whenever you come across the concept of standing deposit facility, what does it actually mean? Earlier, whenever you spoke about the interest rates, the most important rate earlier as well as even today is a repo rate. That's a policy rate, by the way. And all the other rates such as reverse repo rate, or for that matter the bank rate, MSF, etc., all of them are generally connected to the concept of repo rate. Apart from the repo rate, we also used reverse repo rate. But one of the issue regarding the reverse repo rate was that the Reserve Bank of India is supposed to have government securities. It is supposed to hold certain government securities to provide as collateral whenever reverse repo rate is supposed to be implemented. So, what if a situation arises where RBI does not have sufficient G securities to provide as collateral under the reverse repo rate? There will be a problem, and that's the reason a committee which was set up by Government of India recommended that we should introduce a new type of a policy tool. We should introduce a new tool under Reserve Bank of India wherein the RBI will provide loans. Don't worry, RBI will give the loans, RBI will basically take the deposits from the banking sector. But when RBI will take the deposits from the banking sector, collateral will not be provided. Collaterals should not be issued by Reserve Bank of India. And as a result of this committee recommendation, that is Urjit Patel committee recommendation, we introduced a new tool by amending RBI Act. Some of you might be thinking, sir, what was the need? Why do we need to amend the RBI Act? Whatever the functions of RBI, the composition of RBI, the roles and responsibilities of RBI, all of them are derived from the RBI Act of 1934. And that's a precise reason. In order to make this particular change, give a new tool which shall be used by RBI, Government of India amended the RBI Act of 1934, and as a result of this, they introduced standing deposit facility. Let's look at the statements now. It is a liquidity management tool introduced by Reserve Bank of India on the recommendations of Urjit Patel committee. Statement is absolutely correct. Now, many of you will be confused with the term liquidity management tool. RBI uses set of tools under a system called as LAF, Liquidity Adjustment Facility. Earlier repo, reverse repo were part of LAF. Now, instead of reverse repo rate, RBI started using repo as well as standing deposit facility, that is SDF. So, it is a part of LAF, absolutely correct. Second statement, it is used as a floor rate in the liquidity corridor. What do you understand by the term liquidity corridor here? The highest rate of interest which is charged by RBI and the lowest rate of interest which is paid by RBI, that is essentially called as a liquidity corridor. Right now, if RBI takes a loan, if RBI collects certain deposits from the bank, the rate of interest that is paid by RBI is SDF. And the highest rate of interest charged by RBI when RBI will give a loan is MSF, marginal standing facility, which is above repo rate. So, the highest rate will be MSF, the lowest will be, that is the rate of interest paid by RBI will be SDF. These two rates are called as liquidity corridor. I hope you understand. These two rates are referred to as liquidity corridor. So, it is used as a floor rate in the liquidity corridor. Yes, it is also true. Under the SDF facility, the commercial banks are not required to deposit the government securities as collateral with the Reserve Bank of India. Now, please understand this. Under SDF facility, the commercial banks are not required to deposit government securities as collateral with RBI. Basically, argument is under repo, what is the system? Here is RBI. RBI will provide loans to the bank and the bank will provide deposits to Reserve Bank of India. They will provide the deposits to they will provide the G securities as collateral to RBI. Whereas in case of reverse repo or for that matter STF, system is that here is a bank, the bank will keep a deposit with RBI. Under reverse repo rate, I repeat, under reverse repo rate, RBI used to provide G securities as collateral, but under STF, RBI doesn't provide any kind of security, or collateral here. So in case of the third statement, under STF facility, the commercial banks are not required to deposit government securities as collateral with RBI. It is not even connected to the STF. It is basically connected with the repo statement. So STF facility, not required. But more importantly, RBI doesn't provide G securities. The statement is given is vice versa. So third statement is wrong. First, second are true. Right option for question number 21 will be option B. Only 2 are correct. Let me go to question number 22. Consider the following statements about central bank digital currency. Central bank digital currency. What do you understand by the term central bank digital currency? Now let me do a very small exercise here. All of you can see a 100 rupee currency note in my hand. 100 rupee currency note. There can be a 50 rupee currency note, 500 rupee currency note, 200 rupee currency note. This is basically a paper currency which has been printed and issued by Reserve Bank of India. But instead of printing a paper currency and issuing it, what if I tell you, you will open a wallet like this. Here is a wallet in a mobile phone. Once you open the wallet app, certain currencies you can transfer into this particular wallet, which are basically the digital representations of the physical currency note, hard copy currency note, paper currency note, which are printed and issued by RBI. That is, in simple terms, instead of hard copy, now you will be given the digital copy of the paper currency. That is, my dear, in simple terms, a central bank digital currency. Around the world, many countries are trying out the concept of CBDC, including Reserve Bank of India. And what is the basic feature of a CBDC? Unlike any other currency, that is, let's say a Bitcoin or a Dogecoin, etc., in case of a CBDC, these are centralized. Centralized in the sense, the backing to these particular currencies comes from the central banker who will issue this. And that is the point number 1. These are printed, or let's say these are designed, converted into digital currencies by the central banker, and they issue it. Point number 2, just like any normal currency, for example, can I use this to purchase a chocolate in the market? Can I use this to purchase, let's say, a packet of biscuit in the market? Assuming, again, some of you will say, sir, what if the cost of the packet of biscuit is more than 100 rupee? In that case, that is not possible, but I hope you understand. Assuming the chocolate as well as biscuit is domestically produced and the price is 100 rupees. So, can I use this to purchase the chocolate and biscuit? Yes. In the same way, can you use the digital currency to purchase the commodities, goods or services in the market? Absolutely possible. Only thing is that the buyer as well as the seller, both of them are supposed to have wallets. From the wallet, the money will be transferred. This is basically the idea of a CBDC. It is a decentralized form of fiat currency issued by Reserve Bank of India. Decentralized form of digital currency. It is not decentralized. Decentralized currency is a Bitcoin. There is no central authority. It is basically prepared, or let's say produced by mining process. It's a decentralized. So first statement wrong. And by the way, we are supposed to find out how many of the statements are incorrect. It is not freely convertible against cash. Absolutely wrong. If you have a CBDC, you can easily convert that into cash. That is possible. Statement 2 is wrong. It is neither an asset nor a liability to Reserve Bank of India. Please remember this point. Any amount of currency that is printed and issued, or any currency that is there in the market, is always counted as a liability for Reserve Bank of India. In the balance sheet of RBI, if you check out the balance sheet of RBI, on the liability side, the notes which are issued in the market will be written. The coins which are minted and distributed will be mentioned. So the Reserve Bank of India will count all the currency notes which have been printed and issued as a part of its liabilities. Apply the same logic even to the digital currencies. It is neither an asset nor a liability. Statement 3 is wrong. Unlike the Indian rupee, CBDC cannot be used as a medium for making cross-border financial transactions. This is also wrong. In fact, the central banker states that with introduction of CBDC, cross-border transactions will become much easier. It will become much smoother. And accountability in the sense how the funds are moving from one account to another account. As a customer, I can keep a track of all of it. So CBDC, can it be used for cross-border transfers? Absolutely correct. Statement 4 is wrong. Bahama is the first country in the world to issue CBDC. This statement is true. Multiple countries are trying out with the model of CBDC. Reserve Bank of India, as already mentioned, has issued CBDC. So Bahama was the first country to issue CBDC. Fifth statement is wrong. How many are incorrect? Out of 5, 4 statements are incorrect. Right option for question number 22 will be option C. Let me go to question number 23 now. Consider the following statements with reference to additional tier 1 bonds. In the context of current affairs, in the last 1.5 years, lot of discussion has been happening in regarding the idea of Basel guidelines. Basel guidelines. Basel 1 implemented. Basel 2 implemented. Basel 3 we are in the process of being implemented. We are implementing Basel 3 guidelines. Under Basel 3 guidelines, there is one provision which basically mentions that we are supposed to maintain certain amount of capital adequacy ratio, CAR, or else this is also mentioned as CRAR, capital to risk weighted assets ratio. Now what is the basic idea for capital adequacy ratio? A bank is in the process of issuing loans. What if the loans are not recollected by the bank? What if the loan becomes a loss making asset? There is a risk. This is called as a credit risk. There are a lot of transactions which are conducted by the banking sector which would be affected. Lot of assets are held by the banking sector which would be affected by movement in the market. That is called as market risk. And the third one is, a bank will always face an issue or a problem regarding the people who are involved, the processes which are involved, or the systems which are used by the bank. That is called as a systemic risk or operational risk. So because of these concepts or these kinds of risk, a bank might incur losses. That's basically the reason why the banks are supposed to maintain certain capital to absorb losses. So the minimum amount of capital as a bank you are supposed to maintain is called as capital adequacy ratio, CAR, or capital to risk weighted assets ratio. Now in the capital adequacy ratio, you are supposed to maintain capital. The capital in essence is nothing but the money which is held by the bank. The bank's own money is called as a capital. The capital can be of two types. One is called as the tier 1 capital and the second one is referred to obviously as tier 2 capital, tier 1 and tier 2. In case of tier 1, further it is broken down into common equity tier 1 as well as additional tier 1. Now please follow the discussion. Many of the banks in India have been allowed by Reserve Bank of India to issue additional tier 1 bonds as well as tier 2 bonds and raise capital from the market. They have been allowed to issue these bonds and raise capital. But what is the speciality about these particular bonds? What is the speciality about the capital? Why do we divide this capital into two parts? Reason is the tier 1 capital can absorb the losses much sooner and much better way compared to tier 2 capital. Remember this. I repeat the statement here. The tier 1 capital can absorb the losses much sooner and in a much better way compared to tier 2 capital. Right? That is the reason why in the banking sector, RBI mandates, the Basel guidelines mandate that the banks must hold more of a tier 1 capital compared to tier 2 capital. Now come back to the discussion. These bonds are unsecured bonds. 81 bonds are unsecured bonds. Yes. And by the way, both additional tier 1 bonds as well as tier 2 bonds, both are unsecured. Unsecured essentially means no collateral is provided. No security is provided. That is basically the meaning of unsecured bonds. First statement is true. These bonds have a better loss absorption capacity compared to tier 2 bonds. Of course, yes. These can absorb losses in a much better way compared to tier 2 bonds. They can absorb the losses much sooner compared to tier 2 bonds. Yes. Third one, these are perpetual debt instruments. What do you mean by perpetual? Essentially means these bonds do not have a maturity period. The issuer, which is a bank here, the issuer will decide when they want to repurchase the bond. They can do that after 5 years. They can do that after 10 years, entirely the prerogative of the issuer, whenever or when they want to recall these particular bonds. So, third statement is also true. Now, many of you will be having a doubt, sir, what about tier 2 bonds? Will the tier 2 bonds have any kind of maturity? Yes. The issuer, while they are issuing these bonds, would notify, would simply tell the buyer what would be the maturity period or the tenure of the tier 2 bonds. So, all the three statements are true. Question number 23, right option will be option C, all the three. Question number 24 now. With reference to Indian economy, consider the following. How many of the above are the possible causes of twin deficit problem? What do you understand by the term twin deficit? Whenever you come across twin deficit, please remember these refer to two types of deficit. One is a fiscal deficit, FD, fiscal deficit, and the second one is the current account deficit, CAD, current account deficit. Now, which of the following are likely to cause one of the two deficits? And by the way, there is a very close linkage. According to some theories, there is a very close linkage between both of them. If one is caused, automatically the second will also be caused. Remember that. If one is caused, automatically the second one will be caused according to many of the theories. For example, let's say we are importing fertilizers and the cost of the fertilizers in the international market will rise up. Once you start importing the fertilizers at higher international market prices, current account deficit will be caused. And on the other side, fertilizers are being sold to, let's say, the farmers in India at subsidized prices, which also means if Government of India wants to continue to ensure that the farmers will pay the same market price which they were paying earlier, government has to pay more subsidies now, has to incur higher revenue expenditure. That will contribute to fiscal deficit. So, there is a very close linkage between both of the deficits, hence these are referred to as twin deficits. Now, cut in excise duties. If government will reduce excise duties, what do you think will happen to tax receipts collected? Tax receipts will go down. With lower tax receipts, revenue deficit is expected to increase. With higher revenue deficit, fiscal deficit, FD is also expected to increase. First one is correct. Increased government spending on social as well as economic sectors. When government spends more, it is forced to borrow more money from the market because the expenses incurred, the money that is spent will be more than more than compared to the income earned by the government. So, generally you see that with higher expenses incurred by the government, borrowings of the government will also increase. So, FD will start increasing. Second statement is correct. Economic downturns. Whenever there is an economic downturn, generally what do you observe? You will observe that in case of an economic downturn, the economy will start suffering. Economy might enter into a slowdown and then followed by a recession. And whenever this is observed, right, don't you think government's duty is to revive economy, is to revive the growth in the economy? They will have to spend more money, means revenue expenditure increases. And by the way, when the economy is going through, let's say, a slowdown or a recession, etc. like this, the tax revenue collection or the tax receipt collection would be lower. That would further widen the revenue deficit as well as fiscal deficit. So third one is also true. Higher crude oil prices in the international market, yes. Fourth one is also true. So if you put together these particular factors, it will cause one or the other types of a deficit. So fourth one is also true. Fifth one, positive merchandise trade balance. Positive trade balance. If there is a positive trade balance, it is not going to cause a current account deficit. It is not going to contribute to CAD. Rather, it might reduce the CAD. So fifth one is wrong. Question number 24, 1, 2, 3, 4 are true. Right option will be option C. Only 4 are correct. Question number 25. Consider the following. How many of the above items are excluded from the gross national product measurement? GDP and GNP. Please remember the two concepts are GDP and GNP. What is the basic difference? GDP is a territorial concept. Territorial, mind you. Territorial means how much is produced. Of course, the final goods and services, how much is produced within Indian economic territory, all of it will be counted as a part of GDP. Again, final goods and services within the territory of India. Whether it is produced by an Indian or a foreigner, resident, non-resident, doesn't matter. On the other side, what is GNP? Gross national product. What is the market price of all the final goods and services which are produced by residents of a country? Remember this, residents of a country. Now, some of you will have this kind of a doubt, sir, what do you mean by resident? Is it equivalent to a citizen? No. Residents are those whose economic interest lies in one economy. Is it okay? I'll repeat my statement. Residents are those whose economic interest lies in a particular economy. Those are referred to as residents. So, in case of gross national product, we'll focus on the market price of all the final goods and services which are produced by the residents of a country. That is the reason the formula is very simple. GDP is that is GNP is equal to GDP plus NFIA, net factor income from abroad. Right. So, let's look at the statements now. Buying and selling of the securities by residents of a country. Imagine I own a security, share for that matter. I will sell the share to you. Does it mean the goods and services production has happened in the economy? No, goods and services production has not taken place. The money is merely changing hands. Securities are merely changing hands. No economic activity has been added to the market now. So, first statement wrong. Government transfer payments to residents of a country. What do you mean by transfer payment? Whenever the money is paid and in return nothing is taken. One-sided transfers. For example, government will give you, let's say, certain subsidies. In return, government will not take anything from you. That is basically a transfer payment. One-sided transfers where in return, in exchange, goods and services are not taken. That is basically a transfer payment. Here, because the goods or services are not taken, obviously, yes, it cannot be counted as a part of GNP. Third one, transfer of second-hand goods by the residents of a country. Although the term residents appears here, please understand, second-hand goods, the value of that is not taken. For example, imagine you have purchased a car in 2022. Many of you will ask me, sir, which kind of a car? Which car do you think I will purchase? Let's assume you have purchased Rolls Royce. Assume. Now you will resell the car in the year 2024. You will ask me, sir, why will I resell? I have Rolls Royce, why should I resell it? My dear, you want to purchase, let's say, Bugatti now. So you will resell, you are bored with Rolls Royce. You will resell it to somebody else in the market. The car which you have already purchased back in the year 2022, it has been counted as a part of the production. It has been counted as a part of GDP, it has been counted as a part of GNP. Now, because this is being resold, it will not be again counted. If it is counted again, that will lead to double counting. It is not done. So, third one is also wrong. So, how many of the above items are excluded from the calculation of GNP? All the three are excluded from the calculation of GNP. So, right option will be option C for question number 25. Let me go to question number 26 now. Consider the following: growth of financial intermediaries, positive real interest rate, raise in per capita income, low inflation rate. How many of the above may lead to an increase in the savings in the economy? Point number 1, what do you understand by the term savings? If you look at, let's say, an income, how much is the income earned by the person, and from the income, if you deduct how much taxes are paid, how much taxes, direct taxes are collected from the person, whatever is left out is called as disposable income. Disposable income. And from this particular disposable income, we will use a certain amount of money to incur expenditure, that is immediate consumption, and whatever is left out, we simply refer to this as savings. Now, the savings can be in the form of physical savings, or it can be in the form of financial savings as well. Physical savings, where money is taken and invested into physical assets such as, let's say, real estate, land. Financial savings, where the money that is saved is used to purchase, or let's say keep money in a bank. That is basically the example of a financial savings. Now, the question is growth of financial intermediaries. If banking sector growth will be experienced, more and more banks are being established, banks are performing very well, don't you think that will basically promote more savings in the economy? People will have more confidence, they will start depositing more amount of money. Yes. Second one, positive real interest rate. Once you account for the inflation rate, after deducting inflation rate from your interest rate, you are earning a rate of interest. The positive interest rate increases. With higher positive interest rate, people are earning more money even after accounting for inflation. So, people will be interested in keeping more and more deposits, or let's say saving more amount of money. Second one is correct. Raise in per capita income. If our earnings will start increasing, don't you think automatically disposable income will increase? With higher disposable income, automatically there will be a rise in the savings as well. Low inflation rate, connected to the second point, if the inflation rate becomes lower and lower, my earnings after accounting for inflation will start increasing. With higher earnings, that is, if the real interest rate is higher, I will save more money. Fourth one is also true. Question number 26, right option will be option D, all the four are correct. Question number 27 now. With reference to cooperative banks in India, consider the following statements. Statement 1, they are regulated under Banking Regulation Act of 1949. Absolutely true. Government of India amended the Banking Regulation Act. After amending the Banking Regulation Act back in the year 1966, all the cooperative banks mind you, which had a paid up capital of more than 1 lakh rupees were brought under the ambit or were brought under the regulation of Reserve Bank of India. Statement 1, absolutely true. Statement number 2, they operate on the principle of no profit, no loss. Sir, what do you mean by this? What do you understand by the term cooperative? What do you understand by the term cooperative? Cooperative essentially is a group of 10 or more than 10 people. 10 or more than 10 people who have come together to achieve a common objective. And when they come together to achieve a common objective, profitability is not their objective. Objective can be to promote housing sector. Objective can be to promote agriculture sector. Objective can be to ensure textile sector will grow. Objective can be promotion of sugar sector. That is the reason you will see the cooperatives being present in the milk sector, sugar sector, textile sector, housing sector as well as banking sector. So, the idea of cooperative is basically to function on a principle of no profit, no loss. In fact, cooperative also functions on one member, one vote principle. Remember that. Second statement is correct. All deposits collected by the cooperatives are covered by the Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation. Wrong. Third statement is incorrect. Why? Underline the term all the deposits collected by the cooperatives. In the cooperative, that is in the banking sector, there are two structures. There are two divisions. One is urban, second one is rural. Now, when you look at the rural part of cooperative banking, again there are two divisions based on the long term, based on the short term. Under the short term, there are three levels. At the topmost, we have state cooperative bank. Below state cooperative bank, we have district central cooperative bank. And below district central cooperative bank, we have primary agriculture credit societies. That is, at the lowest level, we have PACS, Primary Agriculture Credit Societies. PACS will also provide credit, will also collect deposits, will sell fertilizers, will sell seeds to the farmers, etc. But please understand, PACS are not covered under DICGC. Whatever is a deposit collected by the PACS, these are not covered under DICGC. Reason being, look at the name. These are registered as societies. These are not banks. These are registered as societies. So, by the virtue of being a society and not being a bank, it will not come under the coverage of DICGC. So, third statement is wrong. So, first one is correct, second one is correct. Question number 27, option B will be the right one. Okay. Next, question number 28. Consider the following statements. In case of a BOP deficit, the forex reserves will decrease and the high powered money in the system increases. Slightly technical, listen to me carefully. If there is a BOP deficit, what does it mean? It simply means more dollars are flowing out of India. Point number one, more number of dollars are flowing out of India. For example, let's say in case of balance of payment account, total inflow, that is the revenue side of BOP, is let's say $100 and the expenditure side of the BOP is let's say $150, which effectively means additional $50 are flowing outside India. They are going out of India to rest of the world. But from where do you get this additional $50? You cannot simply say, I'll get from the foreign market, because if you get from the foreign market, it will be accounted in the BOP. That is not accounted. So, which means RBI, mind you, RBI is using its forex reserves to supply these additional $50 to the market. Now, how does RBI do that? RBI will sell the $50 to a bank and receive equivalent value of rupees from the bank. That is, in a nutshell, if you want to understand, let's say exchange rate is $1 is equal to 50 rupees. Although today it is around 80 rupees, don't worry. Let's assume $1 is equal to 50 rupees. RBI will give this $50 to the bank and in return take 2500 rupees from the banking sector. It will take away 2500 rupees. Now, as a result of this, can I simply say the forex reserves will decrease? Yes, forex reserve will decrease. What about the money supply in the economy? The money supply in the economy will be reduced. But more importantly, if the bank will return the 2500 rupee which was earlier printed by RBI, supplied it to the economy. I hope you understand. Who has printed this 2500? RBI. So, RBI is taking back the 2500 rupees from the banking sector. Can I simply say high powered money will decrease in the system? Because money that is printed and issued by RBI, any amount of money, including coins by the way, right? So, any amount of money that is issued by RBI in the system is called as high powered money. So, if RBI will take away this amount of money, high powered money in the system will go down, forex reserves will go down. Done? Right. So, basically the forex reserves will decrease, correct? High powered money in the system will increase, wrong. First statement is wrong. Second one, India's foreign exchange reserves have increased steadily over the last 2 years. Underline the term steadily. The forex reserves have not grown steadily. There has been lot of volatility in the last 5 to 6 years. For a certain number of years, you will see the forex reserves will start increasing. Within the year also, for certain number of months, you will see there is a rise, suddenly there is a fall. Rise, fall, volatility is a very common feature of forex reserves. Second statement is wrong. Third one, gold is the largest component of India's foreign exchange reserves. Even this statement is wrong. Why? If you look at the forex reserves, there are four components. One is the foreign currency assets, and most of the forex reserve is in the form of foreign currency asset itself. In addition to that, we have gold tranche or reserve tranche position at IMF. We have the special drawing rights, and the fourth one is a gold. Gold reserves hardly account for around 8% as per the latest data published by RBI. So, even the third statement is wrong. Question number 28, all the statements are incorrect. So, the right option will be option D here. Let me go to question number 29. Consider the following statements about a zero coupon, zero principal instrument. Zero coupon, zero principal instrument. Now, what do you mean by zero coupon and zero principal instrument? These are the types of instruments which are issued where the money is collected. These are bonds, by the way. The money is issued and the bonds are issued or the instruments are issued, money is collected. But please understand, unlike a normal bond, in case of a normal bond, coupon rate is given. Upon maturity, the principal amount is given. Look at the name here, zero coupon, zero principal, which means neither the coupon is given to you nor the principal amount is returned to you. Such instruments are called as a ZC and a ZP instrument. Now, some of you will be thinking, sir, why will anybody invest here? Why will anybody be interested in a ZC, ZP instrument? Reason is simple. What if I want to donate money for charity purposes? I want to donate money for charitable organization, but I am always concerned, what if there is a misuse of my funds? There is no accountability. I don't know for what purposes my money will be used, etc. For such reasons, SEBI has approved establishment of social stock exchanges. Yes, is social stock exchanges. Under the social stock exchange, for profit social organizations or social enterprises or non-profit organizations, they will be listed there, and these non-profit organizations, they will issue instruments which are called as zero coupon, zero principal instruments. They are debt instruments that do not pay periodic interest but are issued at a discount to their face value. Statement 1 is wrong. These are issued by non-profit organizations as well as for profit organizations. This statement is also wrong. Both the statements are incorrect. Right option for question number 29 will be option D, neither 1 nor 2. Question number 30 now. Consider the following statements. How many of the above statements are correct? So, question, or let us say the statements are on capital receipts, revenue receipts, etc. What do you understand by this? Listen to me very carefully. Whenever you talk about the budget, the budget has two types of accounts. There are two accounts in the budget. One is called as a revenue account and the second one is called as a capital account. Sir, how do I understand what is revenue account, what is capital account? How do I understand it? The differentiation is very simple. If the transactions which are conducted by the government will change the assets or liabilities, how much is the asset, how much is the liability, then simply classify it under the capital account. Classify it under the capital account. If the transactions are conducted by the government, but in the process of conducting these transactions, neither the assets will change nor the liabilities will change. Neither the assets nor the liabilities of Government of India, simply classify this as revenue expenditure. Now, some of you will ask me, sir, is there any better definition for revenue side? Rather than simply writing neither asset nor liabilities will change. My dear, please understand, any amount of receipt that is collected, any expenditure that is incurred in the day-to-day governance activities, in providing the day-to-day governmental activities, that is basically called as revenue account. That is referred to as revenue account. Revenue account basically again is divided into two parts, revenue receipt, revenue expenditure. Capital account is divided into two parts, capital receipts and capital expenditure. Now let's look at the statements. Capital receipts are non-redeemable as these receipts do not lead to claim on the government. Please have a look at this. Capital receipts. If you look at the capital receipts, one type of a receipt which is generally mentioned under the capital side is borrowings of the government. Borrowings are done by the government, and when the government will borrow either in the domestic source or from the foreign market, there is always a claim on the government. I hope you understand, there is always a claim on the government. It creates a liability. Statement 1 is wrong. All those receipts of the government which reduce the financial assets are termed revenue receipts. Under the revenue receipt, do you think any changes in the assets held by the government will happen? Absolutely no. Second statement is wrong. Third one, capital receipts can be debt creating or non-debt creating. For example, Government of India will sell an asset, disinvestment, complete privatization. So that is basically a non-debt creating capital receipt. On the other side, government will borrow by issuing, let's say, a government bond. That is a debt creating capital receipt. So capital receipts can be debt creating or non-debt creating. So third statement is true. Question number 30, how many of the statements are true? Only the first one, that is only the one statement, option A will be the right one. Question number 51, with reference to Pradhan Mantri Vishwakarma Yojana, consider the following statements. Vishwakarma Yojana. Government of India has announced this initiative in order to address certain credit related issues that the artsmen or the craftsmen, traditional workers, etc. will face. There are a lot of people, for example, craftsmen who are traditionally working, but they find it very difficult to get access to the credit system or institutional credit. So Government of India wants to pull all of these together, cover them under Vishwakarma Yojana and ensure that they will get access to institutional credit. So the promotion of these kinds of traditional crafts workers will be covered under Vishwakarma Yojana. First one, Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, MSME, is the nodal ministry for the scheme. Statement 1 is correct. It is a nodal agency. It aims to facilitate rural youth to take up employment in the formal sector of the economy. No, the target is not rural youth per se, but the traditional crafts people. Second statement wrong. It offers collateral free loans up to 3 lakh rupees to the beneficiary. Yes, generally directly not 3 lakh rupees, but it is divided into tranches, into two groups like this. 1 lakh, 2 lakh rupees tranche of loans are provided, total worth 3 lakh rupees. So third statement is also true. So first is correct, third one is correct. Right option for question number 51 will be option B, only 2 are correct. Question number 52. Consider the following statements with reference to Senior Citizens Savings Scheme. Senior Citizen Savings Scheme, SCSS. Now what is this SCSS? Was it there in the current affairs, etc.? Until very recently, the maximum amount of deposit that you are supposed to keep under SCSS was 15 lakh rupees. Was 15 lakh rupees. Government of India has doubled it. The minimum amount of deposit is 1000, maximum has been doubled. And as a result of this, Government of India has been able to collect huge amount of deposits under SCSS. Now this is the basic idea. What are the features? The people who are above the age of 60 years, again there are certain exceptions there, don't worry. People above the age of 60 years can avail this kind of a scheme. The tenure of this scheme is 5 years, that is the deposits which are kept basically for 5 years can be extended. The Government of India provides a guarantee for the interest as well as the principal, etc. Statement 1, individuals are allowed to operate more than one account under the scheme. Yes, it is allowed. It's not just that only one account you will have to maintain, more than one account also it is allowed. So first one correct. Second one, retired personnel of defence services are not eligible for the scheme. Read the statement carefully, slightly difficult statement. Statement 2 is wrong. Why? there are certain situations where if the retired personnel is above the age of 50 years from the defense sector, they are allowed to open the scheme. Third one, with higher limits in the scheme, the collections under this along with the public debt of the government rises. Slightly technical statement. Third statement, by the way, is wrong. Why so? The Senior Citizen Savings Scheme, SCSS, is a part of small savings schemes. The small savings scheme deposits which are collected, there are different types of schemes. Whatever the small savings schemes deposits are collected, the money is guaranteed by the central government, but that is generally counted as a part of public account. It is not counted as a part of public debt, and those who are wondering, please understand this: public debt plus public account plus off budget borrowing will give you the total liabilities of the government, So, if SCSS increases, collection increases, the public account liability will increase, not the public debt liability. So, third statement is wrong, first one is correct. Question number 52, right option is option A, only one. Question number 75, consider the following statements with reference to Generalized System of Preferences Program, GSP. What is this GSP? The concept of GSP was announced and introduced by United Nations Conference for Trade and Development, UNCTAD. Under this particular concept of GSP, a developed country, please remember, a developed country will provide certain benefit to a developing country. What kind of benefit are we talking about? Instead of using the term developed and developing, they could also use the term donor country. They will use donor country and beneficiary country. The basic idea is, when exports will be moved from, or when exports will be done from a developing country to a developed country, it is entirely up to developed country to find certain goods or certain imports from developing country and provide benefit in the form of lower or no tariffs at all, so that the trade between the developed and developing will be improved and developing country will get the benefit of it. India has been identified and provided as a GSP status by multiple countries around the world, but it was in the newspaper because the earlier administration of USA, when Mr. Donald Trump was the president, they withdrew the GSP status that was given to Indian economy or Indian exports. And very recently, when the trade negotiations are taking place, there is a trade policy forum, TPF. Within the trade policy forum, when the negotiations were happening, the Indian side has demanded that government of USA must reinstate the GSP status to India's exports. Now come back to the discussion. It was launched by the World Trade Organization, wrong. It allows for duty-free entry of products from designated beneficiary countries. Yes, the countries must be identified. Every country will not be given this status, countries have to be designated under the GSP. Statement 2 is correct. Benefits can be claimed if it is supported with certificate of origin. What do you mean by certificate of origin? By the way, third statement is correct. What if I procure this good from, let's say, Bhutan? Simple example. I'll procure this product from Bhutan and I'll export it to USA and claim GSP status. Right? So, there might be abuse of the GSP system by routing of the goods. That is the reason whenever you export and you want this export to enjoy GSP benefits, you will have to give a certificate saying that the product has originated from so and so country. Value addition has been happening so and so much in your country, etc. So, third statement is correct. 2 and 3 are right. Right option for question number 75 will be option B, only 2 are correct. Question number 76. Consider the following statements with reference to Pradhan Mantri Annadata Sanrakshan Abhiyan, PM Asha initiative. Under PM Asha initiative, please remember there are 3 components. What are the 3 components? Basically, under one component, the government will provide a deficiency payment. What is this deficiency payment? Imagine the MSP is X rupee. In the market, it is sold at Y rupee, Y is less than X rupee. I hope you understand. Y is less than X rupee. In such cases, the government will pay the difference, and this is basically called as primary, the deficiency payment. This is basically called as a deficiency payment system. So, one component deficiency payment. Another component is, under this, if the market prices will decline, then the government agencies will procure. Government agencies will procure, right, basically by paying MSP. That is one more component. And the third one is, if the market prices will fall, the private agencies will be asked to procure and certain money will be paid under the PM ASHA. These are the three very important components. The scheme is aimed to ensure remunerative prices will be given to the producers of certain crops. Yes, oil seeds are covered, copra is covered, pulses are covered under the PM ASHA. So, the whole idea is the cultivators or the farmers will get remunerative prices. It has the provision for private procurement of agriculture produce. Yes, right, there is a stockist scheme, private procurement and stockist scheme, it is allowed under that. Price deficiency payment scheme, PDPS, price deficiency payment scheme, component of PM ASHA, requires mandatory physical procurement. In case of deficiency payment, they will not procure the crops, they will ask you to sell, and whatever is the gap between the MSP and your selling price, assuming your selling price is lower, that amount will be paid. So, physical procurement by the government does not happen. So, 1 is correct, 2 is correct, third one is wrong. Right option for question number 76 will be option B, only 2 are correct. Question number 77, consider the following: enhanced autonomy over the monetary policy, reduce the cost of doing business, strengthen the Indian rupee, make economy less vulnerable. How many of the above are possible benefits of internationalization of rupee? Internationalization essentially means rupee will be used outside India for conducting transactions. Like we are using dollars to conduct transactions, rupee will be used. That is basically internationalization. And if internationalization of rupee happens, what are the advantages? We do not need to convert rupee to dollar for all these transactions. So, if a business is importing, they will make a payment in terms of rupees. So, the conversion cost will be saved. So, conducting the business, the cost of doing business will be reduced. Second one is correct. Central banker will have more autonomy. No. Why? Even if the central banker will make a small change in the interest rate, now rupee inflow, rupee outflow will be influenced to a very greater extent. And because you do not have any kind of restrictions, because now with internationalization, you will go for complete capital account convertibility as well, the inflows and outflows will be very, very huge. So, autonomy will not be increased, rather autonomy will come down. Strengthen Indian rupee, yes, demand for the Indian rupee in the international market will increase, Indian rupee will be stronger. Make the economy less vulnerable, no, with opening up of the market, with complete capital account convertibility, etc., the economy becomes more vulnerable. Any small fluctuations, outflow can be much higher, you will be exposed more. So, fourth one is wrong, 2 and 3 are right. Question number 77, option B is the right one. Question number 78, recently launched application supported by blocked amount or ASBA in India has the utility in which of the following? ASB as a concept has been introduced by SEBI in the primary market. In the primary market, that is when the IPO is conducted, they have introduced the concept of ASBA. What is ASBA? Imagine IPO is being conducted, I will subscribe to certain number of shares and the price that I have quoted is 10,000 rupees. Now this 10,000 rupee amount will be blocked in my account. I cannot use this particular amount, that amount will be blocked. Once let us say once the shares are allocated to me, this amount will be withdrawn from the account automatically and given to the issuer of the shares. This is basically called as application supported by blocked amount, right. So, right option for question number 78 will be right option D, application of initial public offerings, IPO related issue. Question number 79 now. With reference to the periodic labour force survey and all India quarterly established based employment survey, consider the following statements. Third statement, both the surveys are conducted by Labour Bureau. Wrong. ACIS is conducted, ACIS is basically AQEES. ACIS is conducted by Labour Bureau. But what about periodic labour force survey? It is conducted by NSO. So third statement is wrong. ACIS presents employment scenarios of selected economic sectors, whereas PLFS presents an overall employment and unemployment scenario across all the economic sectors. Correct. Under AQEES, there are two components. Under one component, we look at the establishment in 9 sectors, because the target is 9 sectors under AQEES. From 9 sectors, how many establishments have more than 10 employees? And under the second component, how many establishments have less than 10 employees? Basically formal, informal. But the target is 9 sectors, whereas PLFS overall economy. So first statement correct. ACIS provides a demand side picture, whereas PLFS gives the supply side picture. Supply side picture of the Indian labour market. Absolutely correct. In case of ACIS, we ask the enterprises how many jobs are you generating, how many jobs are required, etc. That is the demand side. Whereas in the PLFS, we are looking at how many people are getting hired out of the total number of people who are searching for jobs. That is the supply side. So second statement is correct. 1 and 2 are correct. Right option for question number 79 will be option B. Only 2 are correct. Now let me go to the question number 80. Consider the following measures. How many of the above measures are likely to be taken by the government to control food inflation in India? Imposing limits under ECA 1955, Essential Commodities Act of 1955. What does it mean? Under ECA, if warehousing limits are imposed, if the storage limits are imposed, you cannot store beyond what has been permissible. Hoarding will not be allowed, and if hoarding is not allowed, supply increases, food inflation will be brought under control. First one is correct. Imposing export duties. In many of these commodities now, government is imposing export duties, and the logic is, if export duties are imposed, products will become more costlier. If the products will become more costlier, it will become less competitive in the international market. Exports will be lesser, supply in the domestic market increases, help us in controlling inflation. Correct. Reducing or eliminating import duties. If government will reduce or eliminate import duties, imports will start flowing very easier into India at a lower cost, and that will increase the supply, help us in controlling inflation. Imposing quota restriction on imports and exports. Underline the term imports. Right? If quota restrictions are imposed on exports, the supply in the domestic market increases. But if it is imposed on imports, supply to the domestic market will become restrictive, and that will hamper the total supply, and that will in fact cause inflationary trend. So fourth one is wrong. First, second and third are right. Right option for question number 80 will be option C. Only 3 are correct. So these are the various questions that have been asked from the area of Indian economy as well as government schemes. I'll hand over the discussion now to Abhishek sir to take up the questions from history. But before I wind up, a very important announcement. On the 9th of June, one more round of All India mock prelims test will be uploaded on a portal. The registration is free of a cost. Please do attend not only the test but also the live discussion which will be conducted on the next day. And those who are interested, the earlier test, these are still available. If you are yet to attend the earlier test, a link for that will be provided in the description. Please check it out. Please attend those particular tests as well. So thank you. I'll hand over the discussion to Abhishek sir now.
Welcome back. So now we are going to discuss the history questions. There were 16 questions in this test and I hope that you were able to give it live. If you haven't, you can now also give it. The link is given in the description box, and all other tests which happened before this are also there, so you can practice those tests. So out of the 16 questions, again a very interesting bunch of questions, out of which 2 to 3 were factual. Other than that, 11 to 12 questions could have been managed with basic understanding of a lot of different things and specifically current affairs. So we tried to make this more current affairs oriented along with the idea of conceptual clarity, because there's a very big myth which a lot of students have, which is it's all about facts and history, but as you will see, there's a lot of application of knowledge which is also very, very important. So with this, let's begin the first question. The new pattern question, which is consider the following statements regarding the Konark wheel. Again, the news because of G20 and generally is quite important. We've discussed this previously in the Conquer Prelims series also. Statement 1. The wheel at the Sun Temple of Konark symbolizes the passage of time and astronomical calendar. The wheel is intricately carved with 24 spokes, each representing an hour of the day, and is designed to function as a sundial. You have to ascertain if both the statements are correct or not, and if they are correct, is second explaining the first one. Now, the first one is totally correct because the Sun Temple in Konark, all the wheels represent, and you can see it here, these wheels actually represent a certain idea of time. But the second statement has a problem. It is not 24 spokes, it is 24 wheels. There are 24 wheels with 8 to 10 spokes in that regard, and then they are used as a form of the idea of time with regards to astronomical or throughout the day itself. So this is an incorrect statement. The first one is a correct statement. So we have C as the answer. Now just to remind you this idea, see, understand this point that 24 as a number for 24 hours would obviously not have existed at this point of time when the Sun Temple Konark was being made. So that statement is not that you have to know it factually, it's a logical one. There are 24 wheels and the whole temple looks like a chariot of sun god itself, also called the Black Pagoda by a lot of European travelers. It's a very important temple, and this wheel is the iconic wheel which was the background for a lot of different meetings with regards to the G20. So I hope that you were able to understand this small peculiarity. The spokes are these are spokes, whilst the wheel itself there are 24. So a very small technical discussion with regards to this, and you can understand how there is a major differentiation between spokes and wheels, and this is something logical because 24 hours, the concept of Gregorian calendar is something which would not have been applied at this point of time. So this looks too absolute a statement. With this, let's look at question number 42. Consider the following statements regarding the Ajanta caves. The Ajanta caves were primarily carved during the Gupta period itself. The murals of Ajanta depict scenes from Jatak tales. The architectural layout of Ajanta caves include both chaityas and viharas, demonstrating a blend of Mahayanic and Hinayanic Buddhist traditions. Now here, actually all statements are quite accurate for Ajanta itself. Started in the Gupta period, it is Harisena of the Vakatakas who actually adds a lot of the caves which we talk about today, but construction started in the Gupta period. Yes, it has murals, it has a lot of sculpture related to the Jatak tales, which is the previous birth of Buddha, and Ajanta being a proper Buddhist cave complex in that sense. And last but not the least, the concept of Vihara and Chaitya, and yes, there are Hinayanic caves and there are Mahayanic caves. Now what do I mean by this? This way all three statements are correct. See, Viharas are nothing but residential complex or the monasteries of the monks itself. Chaityas are nothing but the shrines. Now there could be 2 to 3 different combinations in which Chaitya Viharas actually work. For example, you could have a Vihara separate from a Chaitya and the monks would travel to and fro from it. You could also have a Vihara which is attached to a Chaitya, and this was not that common at this point of time, but we have examples of this itself. And with regards to Chaityas being Hinayanic, Mahayanic, the major differentiation is if you had, for example, a Chaitya, this is a 3D cross section of it. If you had a Chaitya, you could also have a stupa inside it, and the stupa which represents Buddha in that context, you could either have a stupa which does not have anything else, then it becomes Hinayanic because you are using the symbol of Buddha to basically represent him in that regard. And you could also have one more variation in which the stupa has along with it a Buddha's image in front of it. When you have Buddha's image or idol, it becomes Mahayanic. So this differentiation, I hope you know, there are multiple combinations in which Chaitya Viharas can be made. So here all the statements are correct, and this is the catch here, that you are able to ascertain is there Hinayanic, Mahayanic. If it says Vajrayanic, remember then this statement is incorrect, because Vajrayanic Buddhism had not come out of Mahayana at this point of time. Okay, a standard question which has come in the past 2 to 3 years, 2 to 3 times, which is with reference to prominent ancient texts, consider the following pairs. We have the Shariputra Prakashana, the Kumarapala Charita, and the Duta Vakya. Now you have to tell which is the correctly matched pair itself. These type of questions, if you know it, very good. If you don't, please don't take a negative in the examination. This is the first question where you know it very good. Please don't take it. Previously it was easier because you had 1 and 2, 2 and 3. Now you don't have that. So you need to know it, or you don't know it, don't take a negative. Taking a negative in this type of question is a crime, because you can't ascertain the answer through logic. Here what they've done is only one statement is correct and these two have been reversed, which is the Shariputra Prakashana is Ashwaghosh and you have the Duta Vakya, which is Bhasa. So this again you cannot know if you don't know absolutely the names. Literature remains a problem that way when it comes to Buddhist and Jain, but there is a point till which you can actually do it, which is that you can't just learn each one of them because the list is very, very big. So you either leave these questions. This is that 25% questions which are very, very difficult. Even an optional level student may leave this type of a question. Okay. What is common to the term Dhanakita, Bhogavasiya, the Oda Patakani and the Bajahata? Now again, the second question which I told you, which is something either you know it, terminology question, but terms related to Buddhism, Jainism as it is become very, very difficult. So you again either leave this type of question or you attempt it just to make you learn something. These are types of marriages which are actually mentioned in the Vinay Pitak. Vinay Pitak being one of the canonical texts out of the Tipitaka, which is Vinay, Sutta and Abhidhamma. So it is a Buddhist text, Abhidhamma, and it has reference to the marriages which happen within Buddhism itself. So again, a totally out of context question. If you have an idea about this, very good. If you don't, the same type of question came last year with regards to the concept of Sangam literature and Sangam age itself, the terminology related to the Cholas. Same story here. Okay. This is a very interesting question. This you should know. This is an interesting question because this is an easy question, very standard Bodhisattva based. A Bodhisattva is a person who is on the path towards Buddhahood. Now you have to tell which of them are correctly matched with regards to their traits. You have Avalokeshwar, Manjushri and Vajrapani. Avalokeshwar, wisdom of Mahayanic Buddhism. Manjushri, which is the protector of Buddha and Buddha's power, and Vajrapani, which is known for great compassion. Now the idea of Buddhism and Bodhisattvas, within Bodhisattvas, which is a very specific thing to Mahayanic Buddhism and Vajrayanic Buddhism, to be very clear, these Avalokeshwar, Manjushri and Vajrapani are considered the 3 subsidiary gods around Buddha. Basically Buddha being the main god with regards to how Mahayanic Buddhism argues that Buddha is not just a teacher but a god, and Hinayanic saying he is a good teacher, we will worship through his symbols. Basically these 3 represent the disciples of Buddha who delayed their Buddhahood, their Mahaparinibbana, so that they could help everyone else. And once they died, they became subsidiary gods in the idea of Buddhism, and over and above that within Vajrayanic Buddhism even more. These are Vajrayanic form of representations, not a Mahayanic form. This is the Ladakh and what we call as the idea which is very common in the monasteries in Himachal Pradesh, Ladakh and even Arunachal. Now what do they represent? If you look at each one of them, you will automatically realize, that is why I am giving you a visual memory, you will realize that there is a certain aspect about them. Avalokeshwar represents compassion. He is the Bodhisattva of compassion. He has come in the examination previously. Manjushri is the what we call as wisdom, and Vajrapani, remember from Vraj, he is the protector. So he is the protector of Buddhist disciples and Buddhist monasteries. He is the wisdom of Buddha, he is the compassion of Buddha. So if you go by that, these are actually totally incorrectly matched for each one of them. So the answer becomes D. Avalokeshwar is compassion, Manjushri is wisdom, and Vajrapani is the protector. So if you think that this question was difficult, this is a very standard thing with regards to Tara, Maitreyi and Skanda and all. So please do remember, these three are the main subsidiary gods along with Buddha, which are shown in every depiction and very common in Mahayanic, very well represented in Vajrayanic along with Tara, Tara being the principal god there. So this is something you have to learn for the examination and you cannot ignore it. In the last two I said very clearly, these are very difficult questions. This is a moderately difficult question but should be easy for you if your concepts of Buddhism, Jainism are totally clear and correct. So please don't leave these type of questions because this is very standard type of argument in that regard. Okay, something based on current affairs and a site related to the Indus Valley civilization. Which of the following best describes the significance of Kuntasi, a Harappan site in Gujarat? Prominent burial site known for its extensive graves, served as an urban center for advanced urban planning and multi-story buildings. It functioned as a crucial port, industrial site, shell working and bead working, recognized for its unique architectural style and circular houses and streets arranged in radial pattern. Now if you know basics of the sites itself, you will be able to eliminate. You see, as soon as you see radial pattern, this is incorrect because this is Banavali. I teach this, first thing we do is grid pattern for every site. There is one exception in that and that is radial pattern for Banavali. Thereafter first one, if you again know, is basically referring to Unacademy. Unacademy is a necropolis site which is a mass grave site itself, has been in the news quite a lot. Then you have two very specific options, B and C. It is served as an urban center for urban planning and multi-story houses, crucial port. This is called a generic option. Because the examiner had no other option, so basically added some generic statement. This is incorrect. The answer is Kuntasi was a very important port and was known for large scale shell and bead making. So you can see each of the options are giving you a certain hint to what it is. If you don't know that, so either you should know that Kuntasi is nothing but a very important port with shell and bead working. So either way, this is again a moderately difficult question but something you should know generally. Okay. This is again easy if you know Akbar and Akbar's religious policy, very easy. These type of questions in medieval India are a throwaway, so you should be able to do these questions. During Akbar's rule, his religious policy aimed at fostering religious harmony and consolidating his empire. Consider the following. Akbar's interest in religious discussion and syncretic practices led to the formation of Deen-e-Ilahi, a new religion combining elements from Islam, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism and Christianity. Deen-e-Ilahi did not attract significant following but was mostly followed by the orthodox sections of Akbar's court. He is the one who abolished jizya tax and established the Ibadat Khana. Now first things first, you should know 3 is correct. Ibadat Khana, jizya abolished by him for the first time, established by Qutbuddin Aibak at that point of time in Delhi Sultanate. Jizya tax was properly abolished by Akbar, a Mughal, and Qutbuddin Aibak being a Delhi Sultanate ruler 1206. Now the first statement, if you have read Satish Chandra and if you have any understanding of Deen-e-Ilahi, Deen-e-Ilahi is not a religion. Deen-e-Ilahi is a cult, or we can say a syncretic movement. Deen-e-Ilahi was not, there was no canonical text to Deen-e-Ilahi. Tawhid-e-Ilahi, the idea behind it, Sule-Kul, the larger concept, but it's not a proper religion. So this is incorrect. Satish Chandra direct quote, it is not a religion, it is a movement, it's a cultic practice and very well established within the academic sphere itself. But a lot of sources, if you'll Google it, sometimes it will say new religion, that is incorrect. If you go into the finer details, and that you should, It's not a religion, it's a movement, syncretic movement, cultic practice. Second, it says did not attract significant following. It is true because it was not a religion, so there will be no following. Rather, the idea or even the permission to enter into Deen-e-Ilahi was given by Akbar personally. That is why there were only 26 people in his court who were part of the Deen-e-Ilahi syncretic movement in that regard. Was it actually popular amongst the orthodox sections? No, because orthodox sections would mean ulemas and the Maulvis who hated the fact that Akbar was going in a different path. With regards to multiple fatwas were given on Akbar with regards to how can you talk about Deen-e-Ilahi, how can you talk about Tawhid-e-Ilahi, and it was breaking away from the Islamic practices itself. So if you know that Akbar was hated, even Jahangir and Shah Jahan in that regard, by the orthodox element, and that will in turn lead to Aurangzeb getting the support from the ulemas itself later when the Rajputs will leave the Mughals in that regard, the second statement also becomes incorrect, and the only one statement is correct, which is it makes it A as the answer. This is again a very interesting conceptual question. You need to know the finer details. This is where UPSC has changed the way they are asking history questions. You need to know the smaller details, the ideas, the concepts, because if you will go with face value and incorrect sources, you will get this correct also. So you will come to only 2, but this is an incorrect statement. And if you go into any academic source, Irfan Habib, or even go to Digby and all, it's a very well established fact that Deen-e-Ilahi, and there's no, for a religion to exist, you need a canonical text, the rule book, and that is not there in that sense. So interesting question, makes you think in that sense. Okay, again from current affairs, was in the news, there's a series on this recently in one of the OTT platforms, important. Consider the following statements regarding the Congress radio during the Indian independence movement. Specifically, it is referring to a Congress radio which was established during the Quit India movement. The Congress radio was a clandestine, which is something which was illegal, radio station that broadcasted anti-British news and nationalist propaganda. Usha Mehta, that is the current affairs part, and the whole story itself is about her, played a pivotal role in establishment of an underground Congress radio during the Quit India movement. The Congress radio operated from multiple locations to evade British detection, functioning continuously between 1942 till 1947. Now, first and second statement totally correct. Usha Mehta, very, very important, even went to jail for the Congress radio conspiracy or the Congress radio case. So, Usha Mehta that way is very, very important to us. She is a very important alternative leadership which emerged after everybody got arrested in the Quit India movement itself. It is a clandestine radio station, yes, because Linlithgow was extremely intolerant of any form of movement at this point of time along with Churchill, Linlithgow being the viceroy. And last but not the least is this statement, which is it was between 1942 to 1947. This is an incorrect statement. Because 1947, it was in 1942 Quit India, they will get arrested by October and November, and thereafter it will cease to exist. So, it did not continuously go till independence, it was only something specific to 1942 and not thereafter. So, here 2 statements are correct, not the third one. Okay, let us look at question number 49. The Virupaksha temple is an exemplary example of Indian architecture, reflects historical and cultural elements. Consider the following statements with regards to Virupaksha. The Virupaksha temple was built during the reign of Chalukyas and Hoysalas. The temple complex is renowned for its detailed frescoes depicting episodes of Mahabharata and the Ramayana. The temple complex includes a massive gopuram that was constructed during Harihara in early 16th century. Harihara being a Vijayanagara ruler. And this is the temple they are basically referring to, a very important temple in Hampi generally, and it is known for its multiple gopurams, a very massive gopuram which was established by a Vijayanagara ruler. But was it constructed only during the Vijayanagara period? No, this is a correct statement. It was started during the Chalukyas, will be taken forward by the Hoysalas. Later the Vijayanagara rulers will add a lot of different elements. Second is, it is talking about frescoes. Now, I don't know if you know what is a fresco, but just to repeat, there is a mural is basically a painting which is done on a very big canvas, could be a wall, could be the ceiling. So, something which you make on a wall, it is called a mural. Within murals, you have a specific type which is called fresco. Now, when we talk about frescoes, Frescoes are important because they are a specific type of representation in murals. What happens is when the wall is already prepared, meaning it is all done, and then you make something, it is called a mural. Thereafter, if the wall is just been plastered and if you add watercolor to it and then paint on it, it's called fresco. What happens is that the color gets absorbed by the water of the wall itself or the plaster itself, and the color becomes more permanent. That is the concept of frescoes. Basically, it is a painting type which is very, very common in the caves itself, the Ajanta, the Ellora, and multiple other Bagh and Sita Vansal. However, frescoes are not something you will find in the Virupaksha temple, because you will find sculpture here, it is not known for it. Rather, you have Lepakshi, which is a very good example of frescoes on the ceiling with primary color of blue not being there. So, this statement is incorrect. And the temple complex, massive Gopuram, this one, which you see, was it created by Harihara? See, Harihara Bukka are the founders of the Vijayanagara Empire. They would never have that much power to create something like this. It is not Harihara, it is Krishna Deva Raya. Krishna Deva Raya. So, this statement is also incorrect. So, the answer which is correct is only one, which is the first one. So, this again is a very interesting question, needs a little bit of understanding of are you reading closely, which is that if you are not reading closely, you will think, okay, Mahabharata, Ramayana mentioned, sure, but fresco is not there, it is sculpture. And last is, if you know the power play of the Vijayanagara rulers, you will be able to come to the conclusion with regards to this statement also. Okay. This is a very easy question. Consider the following publications: Mook Nayak, the Bhishkrit Bharat, Samanta and Janta. Which of the above were established by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar? Simple. Here you have either you again know it or don't know it. All of the above were established by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. This is something to teach you, and this is that one difficult but easy question. If you know the basic writings or what we call as organizations established by Dr. Ambedkar, you will be able to get it. If not, you will then struggle and leave this question. That is a better option rather than guessing it. Again, if it was 1, 2, 3, 4, it would have been easy. Let us see if this pattern goes forward even this year. If it does, then it has been established properly. But the idea is, with elimination dead, these type of questions become more and more problematic. And as I said, 2 to 3 questions could have been left in the examination. 13 to 12 questions if you are getting out of this whole set, you have done your job with regards to history. History, you have to get that 11 to 12 questions correct and move on and not think about or chase the questions which are very, very difficult or optional level in that regard. Okay. Question number 81. This is directly out of current affairs and was recently in the news with a lot of excavations happening. Consider the following statements regarding the Grantham inscriptions. The Grantham inscriptions. The inscriptions have been primarily found in the region of present day Karnataka. The script on these inscriptions is Brahmi. Grantham inscriptions have been crucial in understanding the spread of Jainism in South India. Now here again, if you have no understanding, this is the Grantham inscriptions which have recently been found. What is interesting is in the question itself there is the answer, which is, first things first, that this is an incorrect statement. If it's called a Grantham inscription, the inscription is not in Brahmi, which is the oldest script in India, rather it is in Grantha. This is not Brahmi, this is not Brahmi, this is Grantha. Other aspect is it related to spread of Jainism in South India? Yes, totally. The location of this inscription has also been given incorrect, it is Tamil Nadu. So there are two things, peculiarities which should have known. So here only one statement is correct. The idea is you should have known through the Grantham inscription why the Grantha or the Gratha or what you call it Gratha or Grantham script itself. I hope you know script is how you write something, language is what is basically the phonetical sounds which give it meaning. So whatever is coming out of my mouth right now is a language called English, but this is Roman English script itself, and any language can be written in multiple scripts. So first and second statement is incorrect, third statement is correct, so only one. Again, this is a difficult question if you have not been following current affairs, and as part of the larger effort by all of us to make sure that you conquer prelims, this is also a very important discussion we are trying to have. As many questions as you solve, the better it is in the larger context of your preparation. Okay. This again very recent news. Consider the following statements regarding Memory of the World Register. The Memory of the World Register was an initiative launched by UNESCO to preserve and protect documentary heritage of universal value. The Ajanta cave paintings in India are listed in the Memory of the World Register. Inclusion of the Memory of the World Register guarantees international funding for the preservation of the listed heritage. Which of this is correct or not? So, what is called the MOWR, Memory of the World Register, is a very specific thing under which Ramcharitamanas and the Panchtantra have recently been added. It is for documentary, it is already saying here, documentary heritage. Documentary heritage, which means that it has to be a text or an inscription. This is correct, it is a UNESCO based organization. On the other hand, this is incorrect, because if it is documentary heritage, it cannot be that Ajanta cave is part of it, which is that it's a Ajanta caves, Ajanta already have the UNESCO heritage tag itself. It cannot be added into this register. Last but not the least, it says inclusion gives international or guarantees international funding. This is again something which is incorrect, because this is making the question, it's an absolute statement. Absolute statement should always be taken care of with regards to whilst reading the question itself, because it says guarantees. There is no concept of guarantee of funding. It is only about recognition, and it also encourages the national governments to protect those texts so that we do not lose in the process of evolution of culture these very important documentary heritage representations or representation of our culture through texts. So, mostly it is texts and inscriptions which are added into this list in the larger context. Okay. So, here again we have only one as the correct one, which is Memory of the World Register, and these two statements are incorrect in that regard. Okay. INA trials, something you should know by heart by now, because it is a very important moment in Indian history. The INA trials were held in the Red Fort in Delhi and were presided over by a British military officer. The main charges against the INA soldiers was or included waging war against the king and crime against humanities. Now, again, if you can see the second statement, you will automatically realize what is the problem here. Yes, it was in Red Fort. They wanted to create or emulate the same story as in 1857, where they tried Bahadur Zafar in Red Fort and prosecuted him and sent him to Rangoon. So, they wanted to, in 1945, which is their foolishness, they wanted to reimagine or create a spectacle of the INA soldiers in that regard. And this backfired very badly on the British in that sense, because here there will be so much support. The India of 1857 and the India of 1945 was very, very different. This is correct. However, the charges on them was war against the king and not crimes against humanities. This is, humanity means everybody in the whole earth itself. This is again an absolute statement. So, if you are reading only half of the statement or not paying attention, you will actually lose these type of questions, which are very easy, making only one only as correct. The idea is crimes against humanity. Here you need to know humanity. It is not against humanity, it is crime against the British, sedition basically, and crimes and waging the war against the king, treason and sedition, which is the two things which were applied to them in that regard. So, this is again a question which is easy when you look at it, but has technicalities which make it incorrect in that regard. So, one only is the correct option. Okay. This is again the third or the fourth question, which should not be a problem for you, but in a way is something where facts come in, either you know it or you do not know it. So, Indian National Association, Shishir Kumar Ghosh; East India Association, Darabai Naroji; Madras Native Organization, G. Subramanian Iyer. Now, you know 1866, East India Association, totally correct. Now, if you again know this, you would know Shishir Kumar Ghosh is related to the Indian League. So, this is incorrect. The National India Association is related to a person called Mary Carpenter. So, this is incorrect. The second one says Madras Native Organization, G. Subramanian Iyer. This is also incorrect. This should be G. L. Chetty. So, this is an obscure organization. This personality is known. So you should have been able to come to the conclusion that at least one is correct. If you were confused between these two, I give the benefit of doubt to you, but the basic point is this is the correct answer. This one you should be able to ascertain. Shishir Kumar Ghosh, Anand Mohan Bose, Surendranath Banerjee, the East India Association, what we call as Landholder Society, British, what we call as Bengal, British India Society, and these basic pre-INC associations are they called. You should be able to ascertain with Pune Sarjanik Sabha or the Madras Mahajan Sabha. These are things which I recently taught in the course also with regards to nationalism, but very simple vis-a-vis the larger idea. Okay. Question number 85. Consider the following statements regarding Swarajist and no changes within the Indian National Congress in 1920s. Basically after the Chauri Chaura incident, when Gandhi is going to withdraw the movement itself, that will create the context for Swarajist no changes. The Swarajist advocated entering the legislative councils to obstruct colonial governance from within, while the no changers focused on constructive work and boycotting the legislative councils. The Swarajist strategy of council entry was opposed by Mahatma Gandhi in its entirety, leading to a permanent split within the Indian National Congress. Now again, if you know the Swarajist no changer issue, you would know that under the NCM, one of the boycotts was boycott of the Provincial Legislative Council and the Central Legislative Council. Now over a period of time, the Swarajists actually started to argue that this is leading to the loyalists and the British stuffing all the legislative councils by people who represent the British itself, and showing that there is a development with regards to constitutionality or the concept of representative government has been given to Indians. So the argument which was given by C.R. Das or Motilal Nehru was that we should enter the legislative councils so as to create a new space for agitation. So we will either end or mend the legislative councils and disrupt the movement of the government from within itself. So this is totally correct. On the other hand, the people who were, or rather the leaders who were supporting Gandhi's call for constructive work are called no changers. However, this statement is incorrect. It's an easy, very easy question, because there was no permanence. There has only been one split in the INC, which is the Surat split. Other than that, there has been no split in the INC. In order to avoid this split itself, we have the September Compromise of 1923, wherein the Swarajists were allowed to fight from within the INC as a separate party itself. And Gandhi was quite ambivalent with regards to the Swarajists, and once there will be the multiple raids which will happen in 1924, he will also start to support the Swarajists, which will in turn lead to till 1924-25 very good performance of the Swarajists. Later will become problematic because of the responsivists and the non-responsivists. So this is incorrect statement. Here again the answer is A, one only. Now we come to the last question, which is consider the following statements regarding the G20 and Indian art in it. The Nataraja bronze statue from Tamil Nadu representing Lord Shiva as a cosmic dancer was a central piece in the summit's cultural display. The long pipe pottery and the gone paintings were exhibited to represent Indian heritage. The summit highlighted India's contemporary art even by M.F. Hussain and S.H. Raza. Which of them are correct? And here very simply, this is again to make you learn something. All of these statements are correct. Nataraja being the part of the larger what we call as the Bharat Mandapam, as you would have seen images such like this, and with the Nataraja sculpture in the middle, that was itself in an iconic moment with regards to G20 and India. Here you had to ascertain if long pipe pottery and gone paintings were represented. Yes, the saving grace was they did not ask the states of these, and we represent contemporary art also. Yes, we did. Okay. So with this, we end the discussion for today. There are two basic announcements for you, and please do note this. Firstly, if you've missed any of these tests, and we've discussed 3, including this one, you can practice all of these tests via the link which given in the description box, and you can see the questions, solve them. It would be good for your preparation generally. Even if you've done these sessions, it allows you to apply what we've make you learn through these sessions. Second announcement is that on 9th June, this is the last time you can practice for UPSC with us. We again have the UAI PMT, and you can again register for this for free in the description box where the link is given, and we will again be there on 10th June with the discussion, and we will try to inculcate as much knowledge as possible before you go for the main World Cup, which is on 16th June. And all the best for that, and I hope that you are going to use all of this constructively. Good night. Thank you. Take care. Do like, share and subscribe to our channel. And as you can see behind me, 9th June, the whole exam is simulated in the way it should be. It's the rehearsal for the examination, 9:30 and 2:30. And remember, you can still register for this and give it. All other papers before this are also available on the platform itself. So do visit the Unacademy website. Thank you. Take care. Good night.